George, I love that sign behind you.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, we're good.
Looks like we're up. Meeting is now streaming live on YouTube. Welcome to the Centerville City, Utah City Council meeting of June 16th, 2020, being held at 7 p.m. by Zoom meeting. Welcome anybody that's watching on YouTube, and we're looking forward to having a good discussion tonight. Let's start to make sure that we have a quorum present. Councilwoman Meekum.
Present.
Councilman McEwen.
Present.
Councilman Ince.
Present.
Councilwoman Ivy.
Present.
And like I said, Councilwoman Fillmore texted me and said that she'd try and join, but she was out of town and may not. So we have 4 of the 5 present. We have a quorum. So let's get going. First item is either a prayer or thought and from Councilmember McEwen.
Well, I'll admit that I struggled a lot on what to do for a thought tonight because there's a lot going on. So let me just say this. I would say in our current constant turmoil that we have in life, there's truly very few things that are certain for many of us. With that said, I'd like to offer up for your consideration that in the vocabulary used to describe police, there are 2 terms that are often mentioned: law enforcement, peace officer. And in my mind, there's more than a semantic difference between the 2 of them. In Centerville, I believe that we have an amazing cadre of peace officers in a department that's espoused the core values such as honorable conduct, professionalism, and vigilant guardianship to a degree that they aren't just words on a mission statement. They're the literal governing principles that run deep in the very DNA of those officers who protect and serve in our community. Because of this fact, I can easily assert that the high level of faith and trust that Centerville residents have in our police department is no accident. It exists because of the outstanding leadership of our chief, the personal integrity and high caliber conduct of each officer, coupled with the support of a grateful community. In these times of uncertainty that are likely to continue, we are glad that we can count on our hometown police department to provide unparalleled service in our community. There's of course much more that could be said, but I'm just going to echo the messages that are all over Centerville right now, and that's thank you so much for all that you do.
Thank you, Councilmember McEwen. And like he says, it is all over Centerville right now, including probably, if you haven't, drive by City Hall down Main Street. So thank you so much. Very, very, very timely. And it was needed. So, all right. Pledge of Allegiance. I'll wait for Leah to get the flag up, and as soon as it comes up, I will start it. And so just repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you so much. Let's go to the open session of the meeting. This is the opportunity for anybody that wants to call in to do so, to discuss anything that might be on their mind. Participants that may call in, we ask you just try and limit your comments to 2 or 3 minutes. So that open session is now open. Leah, we didn't get any calls, did we?
No.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'll close that open session. Then we'll move to the item E, which is the business portion of the meeting. And the first thing we had is the fraud risk assessment presentation. And we have Marcus Arbuckle, CPA, on Zoom with us. And so, Marcus, would you like to talk to us about that fraud risk assessment?
Yeah, yep.
And Leah, can you pull that up so we can take a look at it? So what, to help government entities reduce the risk of fraud, the state auditor's office is asking that all government entities complete the fraud risk assessment questionnaire. And then we present it to council before year end. So see if you have any questions. So this assessment, are you able to find that, Leah?
Yeah, I had it up. Sorry, I'm just having a little bit of
Oh.
trouble getting it up.
Oh, okay. So the first one is kind of the big one. It's basic separation of duties. It's worth 200 points. Maybe I'll back up a little bit. The higher the score that we get, the lower our risk of fraud is. If we can get over 355 points, then we're at a very low risk. And low risk is 316 to 355 points. So I think in working with Jake on this, I mean, our goal is to get to that very low risk level. The first one you can see there that it's worth 200 points. There's 12 questions that have basic separation of duties outlined that we have to go through. And Jake and I feel that the city has those basic separation of duties. And so we would get the 200 points there. Number two, it's asking the city to have several policies. Currently the city has all of the policies except letter D, and that's reporting fraud and abuse. And that policy is currently in the works. That it should be in city code here in the next couple months. But currently, you know, as of year end, we're not going to have that policy. Number 3 and 3A are basically, does the entity have a licensed CPA or there's other licenses that are acceptable. But I cover 3 and 3A. The 3A is, does someone have at least a bachelor's degree in accounting? And number 4 says, are employees and elected officials required to annually commit to in writing to abide by a statement of ethical behavior? And yes, the city does that. Number 5, have all board members or city council members completed the state auditor online training at least once in the last 4 years? That one we have a question on. And so as soon as you do that, email Jake, because it'd be nice to get those 20 points. And if you don't know where you go, I can send out a link to where you go to get the training. I think it's only 20 to 30 minutes long.
Jake already sent out that training link.
Okay, great. And then number 6, ask for 40 hours of formal training related to accounting and budgeting. And Jake and I both give 40 hours a year of training. Number 7, does the entity have or promote a fraud hotline? And the city does have a fraud hotline on the website. You can go and there's an email address that people can send an email, and it goes to 2 individuals. And those types of messages would be reviewed by the newly formed audit committee. Number 9 is, does the entity have a formal audit committee? And I believe that was created last month. Number 8, we don't quite have the formal internal audit function. So we have 0 on that one. So in total, we're saying we have 350 points. But if all the council members are able to do that online training, we would be up to 370 points. And then we'd be in that very low risk category. But were any questions you had about any of this?
Yeah, I have a question.
Okay.
So it tells me we need to develop a written policy for reporting fraud and abuse, correct?
Correct.
We have to do our online training. internal audit function. I went through this yesterday with the fire board as well too, because they have the same thing. And is that something that we are a large enough organization that we think we're going to worry about that, or?
Yeah, I mean, it's really up to the audit committee. So some of the responsibilities of the audit committee would be to review the fraud hotline complaints, to oversee the year-end financial statement audit by the external auditors. And then the other one would be to oversee the internal audit function. And you know, I've talked to other cities and people, and kind of a wide range of, you know, people brainstorming what would be good. I mean, I've heard of people saying, well, we should test, you know, the city's procurement policy to see, you know, take a sample and see, is the city following these things? Or you could look at the RFP process and say, okay, let's test some of these RFPs and see if all the, you know, we're doing everything right on those RFPs. Or it could be, you know, let's look at the credit card. We'll take a sample of credit cards and say, okay, do we have proper documentation, receipts and that, and proper signatures? I've heard of some cities that want to figure out a way, because they keep losing tools out of their tool shed, trying to come up with a procedure you could do to limit that. I've had some cities say, I worry about the golf course. Can you go and do some testing up there with their cash handling type of thing? And so it can be a wide range of whatever the city thinks that is needed, whatever checks or double checks. So, I mean, it probably is a good idea, but it's, you know, up to the audit committee and the council to how far they want to go with that, or what they want to do.
Okay, thanks.
So.
Other questions from anybody for Jake on this fraud risk assessment?
Jake, when's the deadline for that training?
It would be the end of this month, so June 30th.
Based on my experience with internal audit committees, until we fill that other financial position, I don't think we've got the people to do it. Now, once we fill that other position, I think we would have the people to do it.
Because it wouldn't normally be someone, you know, like a finance director doing those types of things, because they're the ones that are, you know, they'd be double checking themselves. So
right, but once that position is filled, then Jake's day to day is going to be dramatically reduced.
Yeah, right.
And at that point in time, Jake would, I believe, be able to do it.
Correct.
But until then, Jake's doing those things, and I don't know that I think you can do it.
No, I agree. Both Marcus and I couldn't do it.
Yeah, Marcus is out too, definitely.
Right. I mean, yeah.
Now we could advertise. There's enough. Put something on the website. There are enough CPAs in town that maybe we have an independent internal audit committee that we, through the audit committee, charge to do some things. That's a possibility that I hadn't thought of. But either way, we're not going to have it for June 30th.
No, and we can work on it this next year. We can discuss it as an audit committee. Yeah, the depth and breadth and how we want to do it. And then make a recommendation to the council.
I don't think we've got any choice other than that.
And it's a thing that obviously we would like to do. It's on the fraud risk assessment, but we don't have to do it, right?
Correct.
Correct.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got to, you know, you can have a very low fraud risk without doing that. That's
right. Correct. Okay.
And so, yeah, you can miss 35 points and still be at that very low category. And what happens after year end, we submit this to the state auditor's office, and then they'll review them, and then they'll come out and kind of spot check them. So it's not guaranteed that they'll come, but probably eventually they will, but they're going to be checking those at the different government entities.
Great. Well, if there's any further questions, holler or forever hold your peace. Otherwise, thanks, Marcus. Thanks, Jake, for what you've been doing on it. Marcus, get some sleep, because I hear you might not be getting some sleep in a few days. So
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
So, if not anything else for Marcus, and thank you, Marcus, for going through that.
Should we challenge ourselves that each member of the council is going to be able to get it done by the
I've done
27th
mine.
or so?
Yeah, Stephanie's got hers done.
Way to go, Steph.
I was afraid I'd missed the deadline, so I wasn't panicked about 2.5 weeks ago.
I will get mine this week.
All right, challenge yourself to finish by the weekend then. Sound good?
I'll do mine this week too.
All right, thank you.
Great.
So maybe next week.
Hey, Councilwoman
I'll
Phil.
join Tammy with next week.
Yeah, is next week
Solidarity on next
okay?
week for that one, yeah.
Yeah, you have by the 30th, but we were just,
All we need is the end of the month.
yeah,
Okay.
just making sure we weren't doing it on the night of the 29th like I do for CPE sometimes.
I'm just surprised it lowers our risk score that much. That's really putting your finger on the scale a little bit, so I'm okay with it.
Yeah, it really is.
Well, it's 20 points out of 300. I don't know that they're giving it that much, but they're giving it something.
It kicks us over into another category, so you know.
Yeah, so it's right. You were right on the edge without it.
Yeah.
All right, so get
All
it
right.
done by the weekend. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm gonna have to get Marcus's filter that includes a tie. That's pretty good. You know, you got the background and the tie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Marcus.
Yeah. No, thank you.
All right, second item on the agenda. This is the public hearing. This is a public hearing item. It's the final budget fiscal year 2021. And so before we do the public hearing, though, I'm going to give Jake Smith a chance to go over it one more time and have any of you ask any questions that you would like. So Jake, you want to take it away?
Yeah, and I'll just go over each of these items, each of these resolutions really quick. The first one that we see there is the judge's compensation. That's done annually. The requirement is that the judge gets an increase that's equal to the average increase of all of the employees. This year it's 0, so that's pretty simple. So it's the same as last year. That's what he'll be paid. That one is there. The tax levy, we did get that in. I included a PDF just to kind of show you the 10-year history of that rate. And I know this council, you were part of that increase about 3 years ago, and you can see that in there and where the rate is at now compared to 10 years ago. So when you have a chance, take a look at that. But the rate has been set at 0.001158. And the revenue is $1,455,728. That's one of the updates to this final budget, is that final number. And then the other things that we've changed in the final budget itself is we received word that the Utopia rebate will be higher than we had budgeted. And also our property insurance rates are going to go up 16 to 20%. So those have been updated. Fortunately, that's not a large amount in the budget of an increase. But
why 16 to 20%?
Yeah, I talked to Morton about that, and it has to do with the country as a whole. I guess there's been quite a bit of damage, earthquake, hurricane, and the insurance industry is catching up. And we're actually in the middle category when it comes to the risk. So we get the 16 to 20%. There's a category above that that's even worse than that. So yeah, anyway, that's the reason behind it. I don't have the specific numbers on that yet. I'm hoping we're on the low end. The 16% we'll see here actually next week. With that,
Just one item, if I can't, may, Jake.
Yeah, sure.
Looking at that chart on the property tax rate,
Mhm.
it is amazing to me how much that number has decreased over the 3 years since we've done it.
Yeah, well, we've seen values in homes and commercial this last year go up quite significantly. That's why you see that drop.
Well,
Yeah,
it's just,
I mean,
it's
if you
just
look at
amazing.
it, your number this year is similar. It's actually less than you did in 2012.
I understand. Yeah. Almost 50%. Almost 50% of the rate increase is gone.
Mhm. Yeah.
Mm.
You gotta go.
Tammy's
Tammy,
saying something.
I saw you raise your hand, but your comment was lost. I know what it was, but say it again.
Yeah, just go ahead and say it for me, George.
That's what
Truth in
happens. We don't have
taxation
an
every
annual
year.
increase if we don't do truth in taxation. Am I close?
Yeah, there you go.
All right.
Annual truth in taxation. Have you heard it before?
I think what, 2 meetings ago, we determined we were doing that, right, in the future?
Next year, we kind of made a commitment to that.
We did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the graph makes it simple to see that that's something that needs to be done to keep it up. All right, and then the other change to the final budget itself is there's a slight increase in the amount that we need from the fund balance because of the decrease in the amount that we'll be receiving in property tax from what we projected. It doesn't quite net out with the increase that we get in the rebate from Utopia. So it's a couple $1,000 plus the increase in the property insurance rates. So that's all the changes I have for the final budget.
Jake, did you get a chance to review the release from the governor's office related to the consensus numbers that came out today?
Yeah, I did look at that, and I was looking at some of Centerville's numbers, and they're actually better. Those actually look better than what they projected last month for us. But again, what they were predicting for us last month, they were off by quite a bit. So wait till the real numbers come in.
So you're less optimistic than this consensus number?
I'm somewhere in between that negative, the optimistic, and the negative one.
Okay, fair enough.
I'm in between.
I mean, to me, it's not enough of a movement to really try and retool the budget at this point. We can do that through amendment later, but I was just curious as to what your analysis has been so far.
Right, and maybe what I can do is when the time comes, probably in a month or two, I've worked with Brant on this. We have a tool where we can actually put in the revenue that we've actually received, and based on the past 10 years experience with how much we collect per month, we can get a pretty good projection of if we're going to hit our mark or if we're going to be going above and by about how much. And when that happens, hopefully that's what's happening, is we'll get more than we budgeted. Then we can start to kind of bring in some of these items that the departments were requesting, equipment and projects, based on how much we project to get.
Yeah, I've heard several theories on how the recovery is going to look like, and the model that it sounds like most people are going for is a V. So we're bottoming out, and then we're coming right back up at a similar rate to what we went down on. I think that's overly optimistic, but I'm hoping it's closer. So these numbers are fairly encouraging.
How long has it been since we have gone out and checked bids on our property insurance rates?
They actually just did it last year. So Irma's the one who does it for us, and they did that last year. They did not do it this year. But yeah, with this 16% to 20% increase, I'm sure that will beg the question with the board. And Brant, you can correct me. I don't know if it's come up yet that next year they'll probably go out to bid.
That's correct. I think what we're finding out is their bid's still going to be pretty close this next year. So we'll probably still stay with the same company. We will be doing it next year.
All right, thank you. As proposed last meeting, was proposed that this come to public hearing again. And so we will now open the public hearing. This is a public hearing just on the final budget fiscal year 21. So any of the public that is listening in and wants to call in or contact us, they may. Leah, do they have the ability to be able to do that? Anybody that is?
The Zoom meeting information was put on the public notice, so it's out there.
Perfect. Okay. So those of you that want to, the public that want to respond, respond by your Zoom meeting information that was on the public notice that went out. I will give it a few seconds for responses. The public hearing is now open.
Well, I'm going to tee up a question for staff while we're waiting on the public, should they come. Jake, this is relative to pages 47 and 48 of the budget. And this is all related to how we're stating the adopted budget for revenues for the rec programs, for the baseball program, and how the expenditures look, because I think it's good that we talk about what that looks like if you don't actually have a baseball program.
Yeah, and so what we have in the budget now is just what we've done in the past, you know, without any shutdown, without any cancellation of programs. It's based purely on history. That's what we have in there.
But to continue from that, Jacob, as well, as the expenses don't occur unless the revenues come in. So if there's no program and revenues aren't coming in, then no expenses will be approved for that program. So, but we do allow it to be in the budget because we don't know what next year is going to be like in terms of rec programs. So we've left it in the budget. But if programs don't occur, no revenues, no expenses, it equals out.
With our limited rec class offerings, what do we estimate that's going to be total number of students? A couple thousand, maybe. It's not going to be a huge number one way or another, right? In terms of total revenue.
Well, in a normal year, we'll have around 1,500 to 1,600 participants in the recreation program and between 400 and 500 baseball participants.
Thank you. It doesn't look like we have any public comments, so I will close the public hearing. And at this point in time, any further questions could be asked of any of the staff. If no further questions, then I'll look for a motion on approving this budget.
Well, I motion that we adopt resolution 20-15, justice court compensation.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and second on 2015. Let's vote on that. Let's go roll call vote. Councilman Ince.
Aye.
Councilman McEwen.
Aye.
Councilwoman Fillmore.
Aye.
Councilwoman Ivy.
Aye.
And Councilwoman Meekum.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. That resolution 2020-15 passes 5-0. I will look for a motion on resolution 2020-16.
I would make a motion that we approve resolution 2020-16 on property tax rates as submitted.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, roll call vote. Councilwoman Ivy.
Aye.
Councilwoman Fillmore.
Aye.
Councilwoman Meekum.
Aye.
Councilman McEwen.
Aye.
Councilman Ince.
Aye.
That motion also passes 5-0. The next thing I'd look for motion on is resolution number 2020-17.
Motion to adopt resolution 2020-17, the fiscal 2021 budget.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I will go with Councilwoman Meekum.
Aye.
Councilman McEwen,
Aye.
Councilman Ince,
Aye.
Councilwoman Ivy,
Aye.
and Councilwoman Fillmore.
Aye. And as always, a shout out and thank you to staff for all your hard work on the budget process.
Yes, thank you. I remember we started this down in the basement February, I guess, we maybe even earlier, but I know that we had the department heads all in. When
We were still meeting.
all still meeting before Zoom meetings, that's right. And that was early March that happened. So thank you. I know it's always a long process. I know it's been a tricky process with all the changes that we've gone through. And thank the staff for all their work on it. And thank you council members for all your study and looking at it as well too, including allowing the public to have a couple opportunities on a public hearing. So thank you. And we look forward to doing it next year when we have the budget all again and truth and taxation that we've committed to. So the next item on our agenda, the business agenda, is item number 3. This is the Island View Park Contingency Fund. Bruce, I think Bruce is with us. Yeah, he's there. You want to give us a little background of besides what's in our material with what we're doing here, Bruce, with the contingency fund?
Yeah, you bet. So we're winding down to the end of the project, and they're writing right now kind of what they think will be the last change order, and the contingency fund is still got money left. And our designer, a couple of times in the process, it's been mentioned that if we could add some a shade structure to give a little more shade, particularly at the beginning, before some of the trees are mature, it would enhance some of the areas and give us some more shady spots for people to gather or enjoy. So our designer, G Brown Design, Mike with G Brown Design, looked at all different kinds of shade structures to see which kinds would work in different sizes, and got some prices and quotes and put them together. And we're bringing it, I think, to the city council to decide. You have what I see maybe 3 different choices. One is to not spend the extra contingency and have a savings on the project at the end, or you could choose to add an amenity like the shade structure and spend the contingency money that's been budgeted, or you could decide to just put in the footings for a shade structure, have the concrete and the infrastructure put there that later you could add a shade structure if you wanted, that you wouldn't have to go back in with heavy equipment to pour concrete footings and bases. So I present at the city council. There's a couple, 3 different choices of what you might want to consider, and this is like I say, just driven by there is some extra contingency, and the designer said, hey, this is something we could do. He's given some maps of different places they could put different size shade structures, and there's different prices, and I think those are in your packet to consider. One thing I might add, we don't have shade structures in any of our parks. They're pricey because they have to be engineered to handle all kinds of weather and winds. I don't know the life of the shade tarps or whatever. My guess is you probably get 5 years or so out of them before you have to replace the tarp part. I don't know if you put the time into taking those down in the winter months and then putting them back up in the spring. I don't know some of those things, but I am more of an advocate of trees for shade than shade structures. But that's one thing that we probably won't have some mature trees in some of these areas for several years.
Well, Bruce, I've seen people use, I don't remember which park it was in, that had a shade structure, and the kids were using it as if it was a racquetball court wall. So I'm not sure you get 5 years out of what you do see. That one was taken.
Multi-use, huh? Multi-use out of that.
It was definitely multi-use, but I'm not sure that that was in the designer's intended purpose.
Yeah, I don't know the life expectancy. My guess is around 5 years is what I would think. It'd be hard to believe that any tarp or material would last longer than that. But
Is it a special heavy duty one? I've had a shade structure in my yard and 2 years was all I got out of it with the wind.
yeah, these are pretty heavy duty. They're designed with cables, powder coated 6-inch steel posts that are cemented in with footings that are probably 6 foot deep concrete footings into the ground. So they're very sturdy structures and heavy duty as you can get, I think, without actually just building a pavilion.
So I would have loved to see the map you talked about. We didn't get that showing the different spots for the shade could go. When I've talked about shade, I was looking for shade over top of the toys, not off somewhere else. I would like the tarps, the shade. I mean, I feel like we've put all this money into those toys and they're almost non-usable July and August. I mean, they're in the direct sunlight and they're on that hill. So as soon as noon hits, you're going to have that sun pounding. So that would be where I would not be in favor of seeing them just cover some grass area or whatever. I think you can bring your own shade little tent. You can find a tree with a little bit of shade, but I would like to see shade over the toys.
Yep.
And
for what it's worth on durability, we routinely get 5 to 7 years out of the shade cover on our houseboat. We pull it down every year in October, put it back on in May. So your 5 to 7 years, I think, is relatively good if you are willing to do that to protect it from the winter.
well, and I think we would need to do some research as far as, because they are very costly, but I'm guessing it's the engineering of the posts and the placement and all of that, and then the tarp replacement is probably a smaller fraction of that cost, but we would want to know that in advance, right? If we're going to be committed to replacing that every 5 years, how much cost is that?
And we'd like to know, because they're going to obviously be better than what we're buying for our yard. So it would be interesting to have that information on how long are they lasting in other parks if they're taken down and taken care of. And then I'm with Tammy. Yeah, I think that's a really big important.
And then as far as information, before we make a decision, I'd like to throw in another possibility to spend the contingency. And that is that the 3-layered park, the 3-tiered park is just going to be so popular and so much fun. And we've been up there and we've seen how that bottom level is for the really little kids. And then the middle level is for the medium-sized kids, and the bigger level is more for the bigger kids. And from the very, very beginning of this process with the focus group, with the stroller brigade moms, the thing that they said and pointed out is, this park is going to be so fun, but what I can see is that I'm going to be on that bottom level with my toddler and my baby in my stroller, and my toddler is going to run up and be on the second level, and I'm going to need to be able to chase them up, and I'm going to have my baby in the stroller, and I can't leave my baby alone to go chase my toddler. And so it's been talked about from the very beginning of this process, the need to have a way to get from level to level for the moms, the parents, and the way it's landscaped right now. The last 2 times I've been up there, it was bulldozed ready for landscaping, and it looked just like a perfect slope, a perfectly sloped trail. And if it was just as it is and we could put a hard surface on it, it would have solved that problem. And so when I went up there, I asked about it. I said, is that going to be a connecting trail? Because you've got the stairs right there, but then the actual stroller friendly trail goes all the way around the entire park. And so I asked about it then, and then the Parks Committee went up last Tuesday and two of the moms there asked about that. Oh, is that going to be a trail? That's such an important connecting piece. And the answer is no, that's landscaping. And Bruce listened to the thought. So it got talked about at the focus group level, and then it also got talked about at the Parks Committee level when we were working on the conceptual plan. So it was, I believe it was drawn into the conceptual plan. And so I was a little bit surprised that it didn't translate into the final plan. And so basically anytime a young mom or a mom who's had that stage where they have toddlers and stroller babies has pointed that out. So what I'm wondering is, so Bruce listened to the concerns and he talked to the landscape designer, and they did clear out that pathway so that there aren't any bushes right now, so that it can be a bark pathway. But even if it were lawn, or if we could hard surface it in some way, asphalt or whatever would be easiest to do at this late stage. I was hoping to maybe be able to see the costs on that as well before we decide what to do with the contingency money, because that's the kind of thing, you know, you want to do anything that takes the heavy machinery while we're in construction phase, and we're already really late on that, but I'd really like to push for that and see if we can find out if we're not too late to solve that problem right there between the levels 1 and 2. Or it's between, is it between 2 and 3 or 1 and 2, Bruce?
1 and 2. And I can maybe give a little more information in my explanation. That was one of the things I asked for, is it possible we could do a hard surface of asphalt or concrete, and we can do a bark pathway or a dirt pathway, or possibly even a grass pathway that people could use as a pathway. But as soon as you make it a hard surface, then it's considered a walkway, a walking, and it's too steep to meet the ADA requirements for wheelchairs or ADA accessibility. And so you would not be able to do it in hard surface, or you'd be going against the ADA restrictions. And that's part of why,
even when we have the alternate ADA pathway.
Well, I think the deciding factor is whether or not you make it a hard surface or not. So we do have all, and that's part of why that other pathway is so meandering and takes up the whole hillside is because the slopes cannot be over a certain percentage. And unfortunately that slope is a higher percentage. So like I said, they can do a pathway, they just can't make it a hard surface without breaking the ADA rules.
Well, even grass. Yeah, so I'm not sure if that's correct, but I was going to just say even grass, I think, is better than bark, because you can drag a stroller up grass. Mm-hmm. But go ahead, George.
Yeah, no, I was just going to echo what you were saying, Tammy. If we have an alternate path, so are all pathways have to be ADA or only some?
In this, because it has a federal grant and it has, it's a government park public facility, we have to meet on all of our playground equipment, all of our courts, everything has to meet, all of our restrooms. You can't have just part of it be meet the code as far as your walking paths go.
I drove up there last night, and I think both of these are good projects, both the path and the shade. I did notice what Councilwoman Fillmore is talking about. Those the weaving back and forth, it's really cool as you go from level to level to level. That's one of the things that makes the park so unique and fun. But you could see how younger parents would be concerned about that if they have to quickly get to a child. So I think that's very valid, and the shade's very valid as well too.
Right, and that's with a stroller. There's quick access up some stairs right alongside the playground. It's just not with a stroller that you can have quick access. I would recommend steering clear of doing grass, both because it's a steep slope, and if it is a used walking path, you'll end up just with a dirt or mud path anyway. It's difficult to keep water on, difficult to maintain, and you'll be creating more of a maintenance issue if you try to do grass versus a mulched pathway.
So can we get creative
Yep.
and even could we even use the rubber stuff that they use for the playground so that it's hard enough that a stroller can roll up it, but it's not officially a hard surface for a pathway?
We do use that rubber surfacing for ADA, the parts of the playground that have the ramp that goes down into the sand. It's a rubber ADA accessible ramp. So I know they use the rubber in that, but I think the problem is the slope. And the only way to reduce the slope is doing big zigzags or putting in stairs, and then that defeats the purpose of a stroller. So I don't know,
But I'm saying okay, so that we're using that rubber surface, that playground rubber surface on the steep playground part of the transition. And so if we used that same surface and just put some onto the side, then is it still part of the playground and not a path?
maybe
I'm just trying to get creative, right?
That might be a loophole to say this isn't a path. This is just a rubber surfaced area for kids to play on, and we don't have to meet ADA requirements because it's not a path. You could try to do that argument. I don't know.
I was looking for Lisa's camera to go active on that one.
Yeah, I'm not the inspector who they do have an inspector who comes and tests your project. They look at your plans and everything, and it has to pass the ADA inspection.
Yeah, I'm going to support Bruce. I just think it's problematic to put something like that in after the fact without the slope. And that the long-term maintenance, I mean, even if you're putting some other kind of product on there, it's going to add some costs.
A smooth surface that's kind of steep that you then make it a hard surface becomes a danger. The reason for the ADA rules of the slope is so that a stroller or a wheelchair doesn't get away from a person on a steep slope. That becomes a danger itself if a mom's trying to push a stroller or pull a stroller and she lets go and it goes flying down the hill and it's at such a steep slope or grade that there's no way she can catch it. There's reasons for not having above a certain degree of slope for things that you anticipate having. Skateboarders would love it. Skateboarders and bicycles would love having a steep, hard surface slope.
Yeah, that just made me less even want it than I did before, thinking that we've now got skateboarders ripping through there and potentially hurting other patrons of the park.
Okay.
But I do think a bark mulch pathway, we've already talked about it. They're going to adjust the planting plan and allow for someone who does want to walk up. It's not a hard surface, but if they'd like to take that route versus the long route or going up the stairs on the other side, it is an option.
Thank you for that improvement. At the very least, that will be helpful somewhat.
So Bruce,
is there further suggestions for the contingency fund besides those two?
So I'm going to go on the other end and say it's contingency. Why are we spending it in our current economic status?
Good question, Councilman. Thank you.
Yeah,
I would
go ahead.
I was just going to say, I would suggest remembering that not spending it isn't that amount of cash in our reserves, but it's borrowing that much less. And so the amount that would increase our payments on this debt is so minimal because it's rates are so low right now. So it just goes back to that argument of why we felt comfortable taking the debt on, because it's such a good time to borrow. And so if it's an improvement that we think is worthwhile for a park that will make the park better and more usable, then it's so inexpensive to borrow right now. If it were saving $100,000 to then keep $100,000 in our reserves, that would be one thing, right? To meet budget needs this year. But it's borrowing $100,000 less, and so what does that translate in as far as the difference in the amount of payment on the loan?
Well, I'm not opposed to either project. I'm just asking the question so that when somebody in the public says, "Why did you ask that question?" it was asked. So I'm in agreement with you. it's almost going to be not noticeable relative to the cost of the entire project.
Right.
I agree with Tammy. But my concern is, I think we're going to get so many complaints on those toys. I feel like we spent all this much money and they're too hot to use. I mean, we've spent the money on something that isn't going to work without the shade.
I'll second that. It's ultra hot, and well, not today, but it has been in the last 2 weeks. So it really is kind of a park that without any shade, I mean, the trees will grow, yes, but without the shade of a shade structure of some sort, we're waiting years before it's functional for more than a couple of weeks in the spring and a couple of weeks in the fall. It really is too hot to play.
I think shade structures really make a park more usable and are probably worth their value. I just wish I had more information about what the cost is and the longevity before we make the decision. So my question would be, when can we get the information by, and when do we need to have made the decision by for it to be able to be added into the project and not hold the project up being complete? And so I'd like to know that timeline. And then if we could maybe just have a short meeting to make that decision so that we don't hold it up.
That'd be a question for you, Bruce, and the designer. It sounds like designer has looked at different shade structures. So
yeah, I'm sorry. I thought maybe you had the information that was sent us. So he's put in multiple different locations of different size structures and where they could go, and also all of the prices that he's already put together. The largest is I think. So you don't have any of that. You don't have the. You haven't seen
that.
I can post it right now, Bruce. So I've sent it all to mayor and council just a few minutes ago. The email that we received yesterday.
Okay.
Well, if you can give me access to share my screen, I'll pull it up right now.
Excellent idea. That's I was just going to wonder if we could share it.
So the shade structures range from 12 by 12, 14 by 14, 16 by 16, and then a 22 by 34 foot structures, the largest. The largest structure, one of the locations is right in between the youngest children's play area and the volleyball area. So it would create a shade area for moms or people who are watching children play in the sand, or watching volleyball, or volleyball players that want to step out of the sun and stand into the shade. That's one of the locations that it could fit in.
Can we put up the overhead? Yeah, thank you. That's the part.
Yeah, what you'll see, one of the options is over the top of the slide between the two levels that would actually shade that slide. One of the options is over a little picnic table area on the second level. That there's a tree designed to shade that, but again, it's going to be a young tree, and it's going to be a few years before it creates the shade. So a shade structure.
Brant, I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm wondering if Brant can zoom in on his screen.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time picking which orientation.
I'm just kidding. Sorry.
I can tell you,
that was good. I can see that one.
Roughly, one large structure is $22,000, and that's $13,000 is for the structure, $9,000 is for the concrete footings and bases, and so yeah, if you want to invest in one large structure, it's about $22,000.
But on this diagram, it shows how many structures. He's zoomed in a long ways now.
Yeah, there's lots of options. I think he was just showing where they could possibly do it. Some of those areas will cost a little more because they'll have to cut out part of the installed playground surface already and put in the concrete base, whereas others are in locations where they haven't finished yet the surface. So.
Could you go back to that quote for just a second? You had one that says 20 by 72. Where's that location?
Yeah, I don't know that he's got one on there. I think that's just to show you an option. They can do a much bigger one if so. The bigger ones, I guess, do have more posts, and that's part of the designing challenges. You have that slope, and you've got to be able to put your footings and things in places where it doesn't come into a fall zone of one of the other play structures, or get in the way and can be accessed on the slope to put the concrete in.
So
So I don't feel like this is what I'm thinking. I'm thinking covering the toys that are there, and I'd almost have to go up and look and see exactly. But to me, I like the one over the slide, but I would like them over the toys down where the little kids are gonna play.
This one right
And I'd
here.
like one, so I guess maybe, I don't know. I'd be glad to go up with you, Bruce, and kind of show you what I would like, and then you can get everybody else's opinion.
I think where he's put those are because those are areas where the post structures and the footings can fit without being in the way of any of the fall zones of the toys. I told him that at first too, that, hey, the real need is to put shade over the top of the play toys. That's what gets hot. And it's those slides is where the kids climb on a hot slide. And that's the dangerous part. But I think what you're seeing there are the options of where you can put your shade structures. I don't think there's any other, he would have put one over the top of the toy if it was possible.
I think the problem is all these locations don't buy you much in terms of the shade you're looking for.
No.
They're very expensive, and you're right. You have to look at, what am I getting for my $22,000?
Right, that's why I'm looking, but at the 12 by 12 shade, if that's going to shade the whole little kids toy area for less than $4,000, it's going to make
12 by 12 won't even cover only a third of it.
Because so on your diagram, this is the top down view. Those are where the sales would be if you were looking straight down on this, right?
Right.
So yeah, other than the slide, you don't get coverage on anything other than
Anything.
benches.
Right. And I might add, we don't have shade structures in any of our other parks on any of our other play equipment or slides, and they do get hot. And there's times of the year when they can't be used, or times of the day, I should say. Even in our hottest times of the year, there's still times of the day when they're used, in the mornings and in the evenings when the sun's down. But you're right, they all get very hot and they all get unusable at different times.
Well, this one's
It's
on a
frustrating
hill.
to spend so much and
Yeah.
have it be unusable for so long.
I'm feeling like it's a bad design if we can't put shade over it. I'm really frustrated. In fact, I would probably go out and look at a few parks and see what else we can do, because it's on a hill, so it's got the sun worse than ever. Yes, over here at Smith Park, you have the big trees that cover it. I mean, so we don't have there would be no reason to put a shade thing over there. I just think that we've put all this money into these great toys, and the majority of the time you want to play on them, it's gonna be too hot.
But in fairness, Robin, I mean, if you have to take into account where these fall locations are, where you can't put posts and still maintain a play structure, I mean, if you were to go from that upper left-hand tree and say you could string a cable system all the way to the other side and put one across that, I think it'd be very expensive, and you wouldn't necessarily. I mean, I don't know. Maybe things have changed, but I don't remember running around as a kid at high noon in July. My parents usually waited till it cooled off to where they were going to be there. So I don't know how. Maybe people do. I just don't know that we're going to get a lot out of it until those trees grow up. You got some fast growth trees, Bruce?
There are trees that grow faster than others, but there's drawbacks to that.
Right. They turn into little statues very quickly when you have to cut them back down.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't see from any of these locations that we gain anything.
No.
I'd like to go up with you, Bruce, and look at them and see what we could figure out. Just so that I know, so I can tell people it can't be done, because I know we're going to have hundreds of complaints that we put this $2 million into this park and it's not usable.
I'd be happy to go with you and look over it, you bet.
Bruce, with shade structures, the dilemma is also, unless you're enclosing an indoor facility, I mean, times of the day, right? So
yeah.
So you'd want a shade structure that would shade during the hottest times of the day. I think Councilman McEwen brings up a point. You may not be playing on the hottest time of the day. The kids play on it in the morning, the evening. I mean,
but remember that it's got a south and west exposure. The whole park has a south and west exposure. So it's hot from early midday to late in the afternoon.
So I'm going to throw up something that's just going to be out of the box, and it probably will not work. But the thought of movies in the park and a vertical screen works. So is there somewhere you can put a vertical structure and basically stretch a movie screen? So you're still not going to get all the hours of the day covered, but you may go into shade sooner than you would otherwise.
It's tricky because that's a canyon that gets a lot of wind right through there.
Well, that's why we
Upright.
have to be able to ratchet this thing up and down. So that's the thing. Do we want to have that kind of horizontal?
And remember, the name of the park is Island View, and so we don't want to be. We want to be blocking that western, hot afternoon sun, but not blocking the view and the nice sunset either, right? So
we just put up a little placard that says Island View on the other side.
But I do have a question. I mean, I would just like to understand better. I'm with Robin, like going up there, not just with you, Bruce, but with the engineer who engineers these things as far as placement, not just where the posts can go, but really if, the noonday sun is very, very hot, but the more hours the sun is on the stuff, the hotter it gets. And so then, most of the shade structures that I've seen are on a slant. And and so I don't know what these really look like in real life. We're looking down on them and they look like maybe they're just straight across, but was an engineer involved in figuring out those times of day and angles of the sun and things like that as well?
No, and
Good question.
That's part of the timing of this. This is something we're looking at the end of a project where we have some extra money as a part of an option to add in. Had we decided at the very beginning with the budget to maybe take out, not have some of the playground features, but to put in shade structures and design the playground features around the shade structures, they could have all been incorporated together. But now you have your playground installed and you're being presented with the idea, okay, we do have some extra money. Do you want to try to add in a shade structure now without tearing out your brand new playground? So I think when you're designing it all at the beginning, you put your playground features and place structures far enough away from all of the posts so they all have their fall zones and nothing is in the way of something else, and you design it that way. This is something where they're trying to add in a structure after to an already existing design.
But that's frustrating.
I thought that's why we hired a designer.
Well, and both me and Stephanie at the time said we've
said it all along.
I said, well, if there's any money left, we'll be able to put shade up over the toys. So now I'm frustrated when you're saying, well, you built the toys in the wrong spot. Now we can't have shade, because I've been fighting for shade ever since we started. And it was said, well, when we left, we can put shade over the toys. So
yeah, we complained about that when we went on the walkthrough of another park and said, this is the problem and this is what we don't want in ours. So this is where I get really frustrated and say, maybe I want to micromanage everything the city does from now on. Like every decision, I want to see it all.
Well, so
this is very frustrating to me to spend $2 million.
When the playground design was presented and all of the different features, and we had an open house and we asked all of the public and city council also for their comments of what are the most important features, which playground pieces do you like, which ones don't you like, which ones should be incorporated. That's the time to say, you know what, instead of having this and this, we would like this and this. And these are the things that
we weren't given that option, Bruce. We were told pick A or pick B. And we said, hey, we want some shade.
Okay.
I think it's very frustrating.
It is frustrating, but I think it's also important to realize that we did go through a very detailed vetting process where we had open houses. We had multiple council meetings that we looked at. Sometimes things in remodeling a house, you catch things last minute. I mean, it's going to be a great park. We went through a very thorough, detailed process. We just have a situation here right now that, hey, yeah, maybe we could have provided a little more shade, but I don't think the process was flawed at all. I think we were very detailed on it.
I want to say a
We
couple
were, and
things. One is sometimes these problems are solvable. It's a matter of getting the right people there, right? So let's ask around and talk about, talk to other parks that have shade structures and maybe find some engineers who specialize. I know that there's a trend in home building where you place your home on the land based on the seasons and the angle of the sun. And there are people who are experts in this, and they would know it like off the back of their hand, right? So if we get the right person there, and then combined with the park designers that know about the spacing for the posts and all of that, then maybe we can have a discussion and still solve this problem. We do have this contingency money, and we could maybe possibly do a couple of the larger, even just 2 of those larger shade structures in really focused key spots that will make a difference. So whoever wants to go about doing a little homework to get the right people there, I think that's the next step. The other thing that I want to mention is I think we need to be careful about throwing this phrase out. We've spent $2 million on this park, and people aren't going to be happy with the hot playground structures or whatever it is. And I think it's really important for us to remember when we talk about the total amount that has been spent on this park, the total park that has happened. So if there's one portion that someone finds problematic and someone has the tendency to say, or if it's us who might have the tendency to say, we've spent $2 million on this park and there's a problem, we have the opportunity to change that conversation and remind people that we spent $2 million on a park, and it includes this and this and this and this and this, including underground things that you can't even see,
and other bathrooms.
Yeah. And so let's remember that on the whole, this is a magnificent, magnificent project. And if there are small problems, we'll do all that we can to make it even better in that one area. But let's not throw out this, it's a $2 million park and we did it wrong. So, okay, thank you.
Well, I look at it this way. The Romans managed to figure out how to put shade inside the Colosseum a couple thousand years ago. I mean, if this is a problem that's solvable, we can figure it out. It may be some more creativity than just our meeting, but people have solved this for thousands of years. I think we can get it.
Yeah, agreed. Let's not give up yet. Let's look into it a little more. Thank you, Bruce. As far as timing, what do we, we're really pressing up against a final moment, right? We don't want to delay the usability and opening of the park. So
yeah, Bruce, what is our timing there? I mean, we have on the agenda here that we're looking for a walkthrough after June 19th, which is only 3 days from now.
Yeah, so they're scheduling their last concrete pours, and that's what brought this up. Was if you want to put in footings for a shade structure, they'd like to include that in these this last concrete order that they're making. But anything else will delay the project. And other than the options that the designer has given us, that it will also be an increased cost to if money's not an option, there's all kinds of options of covering. You could cover the whole park with shade if you wanted, if money was not an option.
So if we're doing,
I feel like we're attacking you. We're not. You didn't design the park. You're not the designers. You're not the builders. So I don't want you to think we're frustrated with you. We're just frustrated with the situation of, we thought we could put these covers in, and we'd like to, if there's any possible way, get somebody that's creative that can figure out how to do it. But I think you've done a good job, Bruce, and I'm not trying to attack you.
if we're doing shade structures, then require pouring of concrete footings. When's the last pour, Bruce?
Well, this week, this week, but if you're going to do something else, they'll just have to extend the finishing of the park and extend however long it takes to redesign something or whatever.
Well, okay, well, hold on, Bruce. I mean, we could always have concrete pumped in if we needed to, right? I mean, it's be a little bit more expensive, but I don't want to put this is a we have to solve this problem this week in order to get the park to open. I think we could come back to it. I'd rather spend the time on really good engineering, some good thought process behind it, and have something that we're happy with rather than we slammed in something because we weren't going to be able to open the park without it. I mean, even if we have to do like a concrete pump or something like that to get these footings poured, I'd rather take that approach than tie one to the other.
Sure. Yeah, if these options the designer has presented are not acceptable or not something you want, but you do want to spend the contingency, I think that's the main question is yes or no, do you want to spend the contingency? And if so, are you interested in any of these options, or do we want to look at other options and maybe even spending more money?
So isn't it feasible that the contractor finishes and we find some options that you and your staff could pour concrete and that sort of thing? Is that a feasible option as well too?
No. Yeah. Me and my staff can do a section of sidewalk or a driveway approach, but we can't do 6 foot deep anchored footings for play structures or shade structures. It would require, like say, the designer or maybe ESI engineering to be involved, and they have to do inspections of the compaction underneath the footings. There's a lot more involved in something than just replacing a section of sidewalk I don't have. That's not something our parks maintenance staff has experience in. And like you mentioned, it probably would require a concrete pumping truck, concrete trucks. It's going to be if you don't do it before things are finished, it's going to be a project.
Yeah, but Bruce, you're also pointing out the reason I was going with I don't think we can tie these together, just the figuring out the 175 mile an hour wind load, what that looks like, the presentation of the shape,
right.
Canyon winds. For that matter, just even slapping down a camera and doing a shade study to see what your sun angles actually are in that equipment, what it's measured at. I mean, to me, there's enough stuff that has to be done that I can't see these two being tied together. I would like to do it, but I just don't think that getting it rushed in there is going to make sense.
Sure, and that's fine. That's fine. But I think the only thing that would have worked is if you're interested in one of the options he presented. If you want something different, it will take some more time and effort. You bet.
So I had to look it up, Bruce, because I was thinking the Romans, and it's called a velarium. We need a velarium, so it's retractable, it's almost Colosseum shaped. It'll work.
Sure.
Yeah. So the questions that I would go to the designer with is, how much experience does your firm have in shade structures expertly placed, right? If it's high level, then I would say keep them involved and say, we really need help solving this problem better than what we saw. And who do we talk to next to get all the possible solutions to look at, and can it be done with only a slight delay in the park project? And then the other question I would ask is, cost wise, trying to do it now before we complete the park versus later. So trying to do it now with this final pour versus later, what kind of cost difference are we talking about? Because I don't want to delay the opening of the park, but if this firm is able to help us solve the problem, they're already on the job, right? And so it would be part of the umbrella of what we're working on with them. And then they're already planning a pour. And so if the cost is going to go way up, if we do this last pour and then bring another firm in later to fix it, I'd like to know those questions before I decide whether or not we should delay to get this right now, or whether or not we should move forward, close it up, and then have this contingency fund and do it later after more research. So I'm open to either way. I just want to know their perspective and give us
Sure.
an idea of those cost differences and their abilities to help us solve this problem. And then the final question that I have is, as far as draws from the loan or whatever it is we call it, is it a problem to wrap the project up, but then take another draw later to add to the project?
So to answer your first question, the G Brown design, it won't cost us anything to include what they've offered as far as other things that they're adding in. They're not having to add extra design fees. But if the project ends and it would be probably something we'd have to negotiate with them or another designer. And it's a combination of the designer and the company that builds these structures. They put all the engineering into them, and they guarantee the engineering if you're built to their specs, or installed, I should say, to their specs, to handle the different wind loads and things like that. So the engineering actually is all pre-done by the company who builds the equipment. And then the design of the designer is just to fit it in where it can fit in around the structures. And so, and unfortunately, ideally to put it right over the top of a play structure, something has to be done when you're designing the play structure. And it's difficult to add it in later, but not impossible, just difficult. Just makes it more costly to then dig up some of your new installed surfacing and things like that to then put in concrete and things like that. So it would be a combination of the engineering, and we don't have to pay for you pay for that engineering when you're buying the structure, because it's all that's built into the cost of buying their structure. If you're talking about a custom designed structure, then yeah, you're going to have to involve an engineer that's going to custom design something, and a designer that works with them and incorporating it into your project. So it doesn't cost us any more design fees or engineering fees to add one of the options you're looking at now, but other things are possible, but they do come with a price tag.
I was going to add to Tammy's questions, which Bruce is, when they finish answering all of Tammy's questions, ask them two more for me. What year was Centerville's windstorm, and how bad do you think it was? And if they can't tell you answers to either one, I'm not interested, because what I knew living in Florida was everything I paid for in my Hurricane Alley home, or apartment was more expensive. I didn't have a home there, but everything was more expensive because of the hurricane rating. So I'm concerned that the pricing we have may or may not reflect what our actual rating should be for that hillside, because it was never cheap. My friend who did have a home told me that everything was really, really expensive to do,
Yeah.
because you had to have the rating system on it.
Did you have another one, George? Was that...
Those were my 2 points there. Is I'm just concerned about what wind loading actually looks like in the engineering costs associated with the structure, if it's really rated to what we spec out for the hillside.
Yeah, so one thing I'm going to say additionally is that I think what I've seen at all parks that have shade structure probably is custom then, because I've never actually seen just a rectangular or a square shade structure that just goes straight across. It's engineered to consider the angles of the sun. Mm-hmm. And so even just this presentation from G Brown Design, I would say is a little bit disappointing. The other thing that I would say as an option for us to look at is that he gave us pricing for the 12 by 72, but he didn't show us any of those. And if we go with the bigger span, that gives us more room to not be invading the play space, right? So I have all these questions. I'm just curious. Why did you give us the bidding to that, but not show us any options for that?
Yeah, but in fairness to the designer developer, though, it sounds like what we got was what we refer to as the napkin drawing in engineering. You're not asking me to go invest time and effort in it.
Right. He just put this together overnight, just a day ago. So yeah, if you're interested in that big structure, we can give him the go ahead to spend some time and focus on, hey, where would this fit and how would it fit? And this is, we're looking at paying this amount for this bigger structure. Yeah.
But if you can get answers to the expertise questions that Tammy's asking, I would be interested in spending a little bit of money on a decent design if the expertise is there. If it's not, we don't continue.
And Bruce,
that we're wasting.
I would like to kind of go up there tomorrow. I know Tammy's out of town, but with whoever wanted to or could. I mean, it's hard to sit here and think of the structures and where they are. And I mean, if worse comes to worse and we can't do anything else, then maybe we would want the one over the slide.
The slide, that's the middle slide at least, yeah.
And so I kind of like to go up there with you and talk about, I mean, I feel like we've ambushed you because we had one thing in our mind. I do this to my husband all the time. I know exactly what I want. He's like, look what I got you. And I'm like, oh, that wasn't exactly what I wanted. So I think if we went up there and looked and kind of told you more of what our ideas were, and then you could, you know, point out, well, look, this is no way going to work here because this is what's here. At least we could kind of go back and forth. And I don't think we can do that on Zoom. I think we need to be up at the park. I wish Tammy was here. We could FaceTime her if we need to, I guess. And just, you know, kind of get an idea before you go back. So you kind of realize what we really do want and, you know, and then go through these. But I think it would be a good thing for us to go up and talk about so that we know. I think right now we're talking.
Let me see if I can set up a time. Our G Brown Design, they're willing to come on site and walk through with us. Let me see if they are available. And that way you've got your designer right there and he can answer questions that I can't. He has and they have put shade structures in other playground projects that they have had. He's told me they've incorporated these into others. So I know they have experience with designing these into some of their other projects. But I think he could answer questions that I couldn't, and I could certainly be there to help facilitate the discussion. You bet.
That would be
That
awesome.
really does sound great.
ASAP when you call it.
You're gonna do that tomorrow. Only 2 of you can go up, right? Or do it in shifts.
Yep.
Well, if it's hot outside, I don't want to be out there either. I'm just.
It's gonna be cool tomorrow and rainy.
I think it's important to echo what Tammy was saying. You know, when you do these large projects, you know, the 90-10 rule or the 95-5 rule applies. You are going to hit most of what you want your first go around, and then there's still going to be tweaks, but it's very tough when you're coming at these projects of these scale to get everything nailed. And so I'm not surprised that we're having this discussion at this stage. And to me, it's just this part of the regular project management flow of constant improvement. So I'm totally okay with having a discussion about what shade structures look like as it's not a problem at all for me. So I'm not disappointed in the work that was done by G Brown. I just look at this as the regular flow of how things go. Now, if this was a 110-story building and we suddenly realize we don't have a top or something, that's a totally different situation. But this is well within the margin of error for a project of this size, as far as I'm concerned. You take the project amount and divide it by what the contingency left is. You know, it's a very small number.
Yeah, it really is a bonus, kind of a bonus that we didn't use the contingency.
If we're just looking mode and we're not making any decisions, can only 2 of us be at the park, or can we all go to the park tomorrow?
Yeah, if you're conducting the city's business, then you need to stick to 2 at a time.
Can the mayor be with 2 of us?
Yes.
So we could have the mayor and 2.
Or you could make it in 2 days instead of tomorrow and notice it.
Yeah. As a field trip, you know, it's just a field trip. But...
And I could probably arrange to Zoom in or FaceTime in.
Do 12 feet behind it. Social distancing.
If you do it as a field trip, you don't have to have a recording, but you do have to have minutes.
I'm saying that we're only going to have 3 in the first one and 2 in the other one. They'll just follow behind 12 feet. We won't talk to them.
Oh,
I don't think there's anything.
Don't worry.
So you're a believer in these progressive meetings, huh?
So if we're doing this, let's determine how many people are available to go do it, to determine whether we have to notice it or not. So who is available and can go do it?
I am.
I would be available.
I could FaceTime in, but I don't know how helpful I'd be being FaceTimed in. So.
That makes it an official meeting, right? If you're carrying the council member in your pocket, right?
Right. So that's the reason the question is: do we just do it tomorrow with 2 and the mayor, or bump it to the next day if there's gonna? So either way, it's fine with me. And I just want to add to what George said. I agree 100%. Obviously, that was my point. It's 95.5. Let's be really thrilled. But also, having built a custom home, I mean, it's the details that really make or break it in the end. And it takes a lot of pushing to the very end to get everything just right. And those details really make a big difference. So agreed. So grateful for the whole project as a whole, but let's go ahead and push for those things, if possible, that will make it even better.
That's well
All right.
said.
So very well said. So we have Councilwoman Ivy and Councilwoman Meekum that would like to go up and can go up. Is there others? If not, then unless Tammy wants to be joining on phone, you can do it. It sounds like at any time you want.
Go ahead. Just make that list of questions I asked and ask those questions. Then we're good.
Email me that list of questions.
Yeah, I was going to say, can you type that up for me?
Can you email me?
We'll check them off as we ask.
So Bruce, do you have some times for us?
I don't. I'll have to talk with. I think the key person is Mike Wannenberg from G Brown Design. So I need to talk with him and find out when he's available. I know he's working on several other projects, but has been very good to come out and meet whenever we needed to and have regular meetings. So I'll just get with him tomorrow morning and find out when he can come out and walk through with us.
Yep.
Okay, then let us know if my schedule's such that I can get there at the time you say. I'll get there as well too.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce. Are we good looking to set a time to walk through as a whole? The whole group after June 19th.
Whenever I don't have to wear a hard helmet is when I want to do the walkthrough.
Oh, you're a party poop, George.
No, I'm just looking at that groundbreaking of the fire station, and it looks like a little tiny, cap, big head, small helmet, I guess.
Bruce, when is the public going to be? What are we looking at? The public allowed to go on it?
We're hoping to
Depends
have.
on when we end.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, I guess that's a variable. Yep. The contractor with the scope of work they have right now are thinking they'll be done by the end of the month. Here in 2 weeks, they'll be done with everything. So we could, unless something delays that, or we give them a bigger scope of work, that's what they're shooting for.
So do we want to walk through? Are people interested in walking through a group as a whole? I'll just throw out a date, the 30th of June. Is that too early, too late?
Are we looking at it? That depends on what our purpose is, I guess. Are we looking at it to make sure that it's got everything we want and have them do some last minute touch-ups? Or are we looking at it to say, wow, we love it?
Good point.
Yeah, so if I can interject, and Bruce, maybe you can help me answer this, but I think one of the ideas is June 19th, substantial completion. It's an opportunity for you to review it. If there's any other punch list items that you can see that we need the contractor to address, then that would be my intent, is just to make sure that you're happy. And the contractor may not be happy with the punch list items, but I don't care. I want a good project.
The details.
So yeah, it's the contractor is willing to help. They've been a great contractor, and I just think it'd be good for you as a council to have an opportunity to review it and have kind of a last word of what you'd like to see, minus the shade for right now, but what we've agreed to build.
So the 19th is a Friday. Tuesdays generally, we set aside for first and third Tuesday for council. So the 23rd, next Tuesday, is an option unless unless I hear something else.
Well, maybe
I'm not available then.
I can do the 19th if that's what.
I could do the 19th.
Bruce, I'll let you chime in on if that schedule still works.
Yeah. As far as me, I could meet you on the 19th, and Yeah, if did I hear correctly that there has to be minutes taken?
No, it's a field trip.
Okay. Okay. So just notes then of what you want to add to.
We don't
Minutes
even have
need to
to
be
have notes.
taken,
We
but
just
no
have
recording.
No
We don't have-
recording, but written minutes.
notified.
So
We
we'll
do
have Leah
have
follow
minutes, yeah.
behind with a pad of paper and a pen.
Yep.
And
That's
if
what I
it
was gonna
is,
say. Yeah, it's if so long as we get your comments or whatever to add to the contractor's final punch list, that's it. You know, they're going to try to have everything majority done, and they might have a thing or two that they're still finishing up, but this is an opportunity to add anything else, that last minute finish up things that need to be done before they're completely done and we sign off and they leave.
Okay. So
And that's what that week afterwards. So they have their substantial completion on the 19th, but by the time they finish up their punch list, it's probably the 30th, and then we're, if all goes well and there's no other delays, then it's ready to open.
So I don't know when Councilwoman Fillmore's back. I don't think she is on the 19th.
It's okay. You guys go ahead. I think yeah, we had a good talk tonight, and by the way, I'm 2 hours later here and I have some vacation stuff I've got to get to, so I'm going to sign off, but enjoy the rest of your meeting and I'll get an update from the mayor later.
Hey, have
Thanks
fun. but
for
keep your
joining us. Have fun.
sunscreen, Tammy.
Okay, thank you.
Councilwoman.
Okay,
Okay, so
bye-bye.
19th, are we looking at time on the 19th then?
I can make it work anytime.
I'm not available the 19th.
Is the 22nd too late?
I'm gone the 22nd through the 26th.
Okay.
Sorry.
So we're gonna leave out at least one or two, it sounds like. So it's either the 19th or the 22nd, it sounded like, and Councilwoman Ivy's left out, or on the Saturday the 20th. So
I am also
Bill,
out on the 20th.
Are you? Well, maybe if I go with Robin tomorrow or the next day, and then you can go on the walkthrough on the 22nd.
Okay.
Yeah,
That work?
that sounds great.
Okay.
Walk through 22nd or 23rd?
We've already
either way.
got a different meeting on the
23rd.
23rd. No, we've already got a different meeting in the afternoon on the 23rd, Mayor.
Okay, 22nd then at like 5 o'clock, or do we need to go earlier or later?
I prefer the 5 o'clock. It should be a little cooler.
I'm with Bill on that.
Is that a good time, Bruce?
Yeah, I'll accommodate whatever you need. So 5 o'clock on the 22nd.
Yeah.
Okay.
All righty. Okay, I don't have anything else on this topic unless you guys do. Otherwise, we'll move on. Thank you so much, Bruce, and thanks for all
Thank
the
you.
good input, staff.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on to item number 4. This is a 4th of July air parade update. I'm gonna just leave an little introduction and let Councilman Ince talk more on this, because I know he's worked a lot of long, hard hours on this. So we've been trying to address the concerns of liability. And we think we found a solution to that, where we've addressed those concerns. We've got everyone involved. We had a meeting earlier today with all 12 cities involved. And so Councilman Ince, I know I've been helping and coordinating with the mayors, but I know that you put a lot of hard work in. So I want you to get, I'll just fill in with what you might say.
I guess I'm not sure where to start.
You want me to start then?
Well, I'm
We're
just
having
trying
one?
I'm trying to think about Lisa's comment earlier in Lisa's email, which I don't know, Mayor, you may have seen, I've read. So in one of the, and I've talked about this before, but in one of the emergency response meetings, preparation meetings, this thing got dreamed up, and it seemed like an opportunity to try and do something to restore some kind of a citywide activity for the 4th of July. But because of the smaller size, we couldn't really do something over Centerville. We needed to do something over a larger area. And it ended up growing to cover the county. Now, last meeting, we talked about the liability issue. We have met with Irma. We have an opinion, a written opinion from Irma, which will be shared with the other cities. Other cities can then take Irma's opinion and either use it or take it to whoever their advisor is. Irma basically said they would not seek out separate coverage, but they would get insurance coverage through the commercial participants by getting certificates of insurance for each of the entities involved in providing the activity. The entities are basically the county plus 12 cities. And then because it appears that a number of the landing locations will be on school district property, the school district.
So while you're thinking through, I'll throw in there that as part of that, this certificate of insurance, we have found out through Irma and that the organizations that would be participating in this need to get that from their insurance companies, and we'll get those to all the cities. We're making sure that all the organizations are obviously in the business of doing this, so they have all that sort of coverage. So we don't have XYZ flying school taking their pilot up for this first time by himself. I mean, all the organizations are involved do this professionally, and they do carry those policies. If they don't, then they're not part of it.
They're not part of it. The original concept did actually have private pilots participating, some of them being people on the committee that were meeting. But we were introduced to the manager of Sky Park, who has run these kinds of activities and is involved in them and is familiar with most of the people we're talking about. And he has just stressed all the way along that involving anyone who doesn't routinely do these kinds of things is asking for trouble, because invariably you'll get somebody who decides he wants to be cute and do something extra over his house or his friend's house or his brother's house. And that's what leads to problems. So every one of these people, every one of these groups are routinely doing this, have insurance coverage. There's been some minimums set by Irma. They will be reviewing the certificates of insurance. I probably need to do a mea culpa, because in trying to dream this thing up and get it put together, I did it with a small committee. The mayor, myself, a person from Sky Park, someone from
Fruit Heights.
Yeah, is it West Bountiful or Woods Cross? Woods Cross, someone from Woods Cross, and someone from Fruit Heights. And so we kind of put it together and recruited the initial people. We did not meet with Lisa, or Brant was vaguely aware of it, to have a lot of city input in doing it. And so Lisa is left feeling uncomfortable with the structure. There are no contractual agreements with the providers. Yes, Lisa, they are handshake arrangements. One of the things that we need to get into is when money is paid. Nobody has asked for money up front at this point. There is one provider who will get 75%, 60% of the overall funds. I would imagine he will want at least a portion up front. Others, I don't think are particularly worried about it and aren't asking. They feel like they're dealing with someone reputable and we will follow through and pay them. We say we have the budget for it and they're believing us.
So I should also throw in there that 12 cities are in, they're each putting $1,000 in, and the county is putting in $3,000. And there's been other city managers and city attorneys concerned as well too. That's why we've gone through this process. And so they've looked at it as well too, and everybody's in agreement that if we can get these certificate of insurances, at least so far, that they're in agreement that we'll all be good, and they've each given us a representative from their city.
So, okay.
We did have a discussion in the meeting today. Why don't you let us finish, George, and then we can talk about questions.
I'll ask you another question in a second.
We did have a discussion today because of Lisa's input about the potential of trying to generate an interlocal agreement. Basically, even though the initial thought was, even though the time was short, potentially it could be done, but several of the other cities are not going to have another city council meeting before the event. And since an interlocal agreement has to be passed by city councils, and the likelihood of people accepting an agreement first pass without any comment is slim to none. The feeling of the meeting was, and there were 2 or 3 city managers in the meeting, as well as the mayor and then some other council people, was to not pursue the interlocal agreement. I guess at this point, we're getting close to releasing some publicity. We haven't spread the word a lot, but the word is starting to spread. It would be embarrassing to walk away from it at this point if people felt like we couldn't do it without an interlocal agreement. But if the feeling is strong enough that we have to, I guess that probably is a potential. So today we had one bad piece of news, and that is that we have an initial turn down from the guard unit that runs the Blackhawks. We are trying to get them back to the table, but they have said no. We have confirmation, either final or preliminary from, final or preliminary from everyone else. Hillfield has not yet decided whether they will do an elongated circle around the county or just a fly through the county. It will be one or the other. They have committed to that. The Commemorative Air Force has committed. We have positive vibes from the KC-135, but they are not committed. We have the Experimental Aircraft Association. They are working on their insurance certificate. Some of these others are just barely finding out about it. We have 2 Airshow Companies. They will be limited in what they can do. In other words, no barrel rolls or real fancy things, but they will have smoke and fly some patterns and different things. Again, flying a circuit around the county. We have a flight of trainers who train commercial pilots. We're not sure how many planes they will have. 4 or 5 is the expected number that I understood. And then we have the parachutists trailing flags and smoke, 1 for each of 12 cities. They will probably be in the air and overhead longest. We're hearing someplace in the neighborhood of 5 to 7 minutes over every city, jumping from about 4,000 to 5,000 feet above the ground. Total time frame will run approximately 9 until 10:15, 10:30. It'll be advertised that the smoke jumpers are the end, so people will know when to disappear and do whatever they want to do. Our budget, so the mayor mentioned, we've got $15,000 committed. We're sitting right at, with some negotiating left going on, right at about $14,000. So that's kind of where we are and what we're doing. Lisa was, well, that's not fair. Several people, Brant maybe taking the lead, was a little bit uncomfortable with who is the sponsor. And there was a discussion of this in the meeting this afternoon. And basically it was agreed with the city that all of the cities in the county are co-sponsoring, but clearly since the mayor and I got this thing rolling, we are more in the driver's seat.
They looked at as all the cities were hosts of this event, including the county.
Yes. That's what we've kind of put together. I guess I'm available for questions.
So Bill, who's getting the 75% of the money? Which group?
Skydive Ogden.
Okay.
Skydive Ogden will have their own cars and observers at each of the landing locations and be returning the skydivers to Ogden. They will be there with windsocks and appropriate markers so that the people complete their jumps safely. Each city at its designated location will need to have someone there so that if there is ad hoc use of the area, it can be cleared away so the jumper can land.
So of the 12 of the 15 cities that are participating, everybody wanted a skydiver. Hence, that's why the biggest cost for the skydivers. There was one city that initially didn't, but then they changed their mind and wanted it. So they're the most, and in having 12 skydivers, that's where the bulk of the cost is.
So the funds these are handshake commitments, right? So we don't have, I guess this is where the interlocal potentially to me is a good thing, is that it gives a legal structure behind who collects money, who disperses funds, who verifies the certificates. I mean, I guess if Urban is willing to do all that and they're willing to be in the driver's seat in terms of validating all the insurance coverage, that's one thing.
Say that again, George, because I think that isn't what's happening. So say it again. I didn't quite follow.
So there's 2 pieces. One, the interlocal at least structures, from my perspective, the legal framework of who's responsible for cash handling and payment disbursement. Because we got 12 separate legal entities involved in this. The second piece would be, is IRMA in the driver's seat as far as validating these certificates of insurance? I mean, I'm looking for maximum transfer of risk. So who owns it as far as saying this is done, they have everything they need, legally we're covered?
IRMA has agreed to do that for us and for the other cities that they represent.
So
They will share that conclusion with all of the cities, but they're not in a position to necessarily do it for each of the cities.
If I can interject, Councilman Grants, I did speak to, I've had contact all day today and yesterday with all three of the insurance providers for the cities, IRMA, Utah Local Governments Trust, as well as Olympus. And what I've basically advised is, at this point, because they've been asking me questions, and again, I'm not in the driver's seat, I'm not on the committee, I've kind of said, look, I know you have questions on what's best for your members or your clients. You need to go represent your clients. And I stated, once we get the certificates of insurance, that I think we submit it to all three of them and they inspect them for their members. I don't think Dave feels comfortable representing other, the interests of other cities, as well as I don't either. So once we collect those certificates of insurance, we submit it to the three directors of these three insurance agencies, and they advise their own clients. That was, and they liked that proposal.
Thank you, Brandon. I also said in the meeting today, those that don't have IRMA, I said, go to the trust, go to Olympus, whoever you're using, and make sure that they're okay with it as well too. And of course, we'll get you all these signed agreements when they come in. Thanks for that, Brent.
Yeah. The other thing,
who does everyone just write their own individual check out to Ogden Skydivers? And
no, everyone writes their check out to the city of Centerville, and then the city of Centerville will make the payments. And the Brant and the mayor and I had talked about that 2 weeks ago, and that was agreed.
Does that place us in first position for who gets sued because now we're the event sponsor?
Yeah,
I guess it probably does.
Yeah, I was just wondering, is there a reason that the cities can't pay Sky Park or directly? Did someone want it to come through Centerville?
Someone needed to take responsibility to get it going, and the mayor jumped in and helped us get it going and negotiated with the other mayors. Sky Park is helping on the committee, but is helping on the committee as a good corporate citizen. It's Skydive Ogden that gets the money, and the mechanics of putting it together with 12 people negotiating with Skydive Ogden and paying them separately would be unworkable.
I don't know. To me, that's why I asked the question, Bill, is that I don't mind having a contractual relationship with Skydive Ogden once we've got validation from our insurance carrier that the certificates are good. I don't know that I would necessarily want to extend that liability by paying on behalf of other cities. I mean, I don't know how the legal framework on it works. Chances of something happening are very, very slim, but if something happened, what kind of exposure do we have potentially as the one who basically was the only legal entity who paid out money? Sure, everyone else paid us money, but I don't know. Concerned. It's kind of like going Dutch on lunch, if everyone else, we can split the bill and then it's a portion, then it's probably, I don't know, feels safer to me, but maybe that's just an irrational fear. I don't know.
My response to that, Councilman McEwen, is there is a perception from two city managers. I'm writing the check to the city, therefore I'm indemnified, to the city indemnified me. That's the perception. And the other city manager did say, look, if things happen, even in another city, the finger pointing is going to happen. And the concern is the finger pointing is going to point towards Centerville. So, I mean, those are real questions being asked. I think the idea of having, paying individually to each one of these entities is one idea. But again, I haven't, anyway.
How complicated is this interlocal that we need to do? I mean, is this a simple 2-pager, or is this something that's going to require weeks of negotiation?
I'll let Councilman Rentz answer that. I think you had a good analogy earlier. Once you start an interlocal, you're going to have council members wanting to have input, lawyers having input, city managers having input, and you're starting from scratch. And you're going to have a crazy document.
And it's not even necessarily so much the crazy document, it's the turnaround time. We don't have time to do it.
So there is the possibility of, I guess if we've received any checks, we give them back, and cities write out their own checks to these places now that we have tied down dollar amounts.
I would enjoy that. I think that's a great suggestion if it's a possibility. And anyway, if that can happen, I think that is a better way to go. And I think that does remove some liability. What Dave Peterson said from Irma early on, you know, if we're not involved, our liability is less, but if we're heavily involved, it increases. And not just for Centerville, for every city. And with this, us being in the driver's seat, it has increased, and that is the concern. But if we do allow each entity to pay their own way, I think that does alleviate a lot of that responsibility and that liability from the city, because each entity is now agreed that they are now a co-sponsor and paying for their own bills.
To me, that's not only the cleanest way, but it presents the opportunity, because everyone says they're committed, but if a council backs out at the last minute, whatever, I don't know that that's going to happen, but if somebody decides they're not writing a check for it, do we cover the balance, or how does that work out? So it almost seems like it'd be cleaner just to have them pay individually for the, I mean, they know what the total level is going to be, but
it's cleaner. It's cleaner for the city, but would you be willing to go sight unseen with 12 different payers that you don't have an arrangement with and you've never talked to in providing a service like this?
They have access to the public meetings. I don't know if this is being discussed elsewhere. I mean, I think that Skydive Ogden, or whatever their current name is, would be apt to want to take the cash. I don't know that they would be mistrustful of the city in Davis County. I don't know that anyone's ever run out on a check before. So, I mean, I think that there'd be, if it's a handshake between us and Skydive, I don't know that it would be any different for them to say it's a handshake between them and 12 cities that want somebody to land in their neighborhood. I mean, I just don't see the difference to me. And as far as the difference of, you know, one invoice or 12, I'm getting paid. My printer is cheap, you know, I'd rather get the money. I don't know.
My business experience says it won't work. You're not going to get it done because you've got Skydive Ogden. Yeah, Skydive Ogden is the big one, but now you've got several other small ones. You've got a barbecue for people. You're gonna do that with, you know, 12 different entities on the barbecue, 13 because you got the county on the barbecue.
Well, government entities, I think there have to be some level of trust. We also have to, I don't know, point out that this is a 4th of July thing. So if we can't be held to our bond on the 4th of July as 12 entities and it has to be one, then what is that saying about the 11 other entities? I mean, I'm not saying just appeal to their patriotism, but in this particular case, I don't know that we're not talking about a used car. We're talking about a flyover on the 4th of July. So, you know, maybe there needs to be a little trust on that from their perspective. I'm just looking at it within, and I appreciate the fact that you and the mayor have put this together. I'm just looking at it from the standpoint of what do I do to isolate the city as much as possible from any risk or liability? And there are the two pieces, the insurance and the cash handling. If I'm not in the insurance, because Irma is going to do that bit, which would be great. And then if I can get out of the cash handling business, then I've isolated the city as much as possible while still enjoying the air show at the same time. I don't know,
George, I haven't got enough. I'll put it this way. I haven't got enough hours today to make it work. If you want to step in and make it work, come help. That's what it comes down to, because you're talking about multiplying by 12 the mechanics, and it's killing me now. I am absolutely regretting having ever opened Pandora's box.
Bill, I'm not trying to beat you over the head on it.
George, that doesn't, I'm just saying, I'm regretting having opened Pandora's box. I've missed meetings with clients and other things in trying to get it done.
And if I had any hours in the day, I would jump in and help you out. I mean, is there a way? Sorry, Brent, I know you don't want to be necessarily involved, but can't we just shoot something out to the other city managers and say, hey, this is what makes most sense for our city? Is there an issue? And find out really quickly if this is a problem.
I would propose, again, from a staff perspective, I am spending time on this at this point, but Councilmember Rentz, you do have a committee, and I think there is an opportunity to delegate a lot of this to that committee. I mean, us taking the huge role we have between you and the mayor is a great role, and you shouldn't be bearing that much. And that's why when we have a 4th of July committee, it's not just Kim. You have a parade chair, and you have 6 or 7 other volunteers. You have a committee. Start delegating and ask them to get involved, and ask these cities to step up and get buy-in. I don't know if that's a reasonable request, but from a staff perspective, I mean, these other cities have staff that could assist as well.
Well, we have 12. We have 12 cities with all giving us names of people to help out. Bill, obviously, you've established the contacts and people you've called. You and Chris. Chris is the Sky Park manager, and so you guys have to continue that part. But as far as going back, it's and paying each of these suppliers individually, that's where we'd have to get them involved, to go back and say, hey, this is what each person needs, and they need their check by this date, and we just do that through email.
If I'm not mistaken, Mayor, I have an email on your contact list of Stephen Marshall, who is the finance director for Syracuse. And it's Brody Bavaro, and also says, but there is an email for Stephen Marshall.
Yeah,
Steve's
he joined.
As a finance director, he should be able to knock that out if he's one of your point of contacts. Like, I'm not trying to pass. I'm just trying to share, because the more we're in the driver's seat, the more liability we're taking on. But you have a committee. Let's use the committee.
No, I don't want to burn any more of your time, Bill. I mean, you've put a ton of time into this, but to me, this seems like one you could throw out the all call really quickly and find out if this is going to work. I don't see this as a multi-day project. This should be, hey, here's what we need to do. Supplier, here's what the thought is. Please tell us why this won't work or will work, and are you willing to work with that? So, Robin, you're on mute.
Thanks, George. Bill, I want to say I think you've saved the 4th of July for all of Centerville, and a lot of other cities too. So I am sorry about the time you've had to put forth, but I think it's all worth it. And I, as one citizen, can't tell you thank you enough for all you've done.
Well, thank you, but I
no good deed goes unpunished, Bill. We know that.
Yeah, and I think we're killing it. So I will try, but I think we're pulling the plug on it. So if that's what we want to do, that's what we're doing.
Well,
I don't want to see the plug pulled.
Go ahead.
I don't want to see the plug pulled. If there's a way to reach out and say, hey, could everybody pay this much to this much to this much to this, and agree to that, and they say yes, then great. If that doesn't work, then I'd rather take a deep breath and cross my fingers that everything goes okay and just continue as it is.
Remember, I mean, there is not, so what is the liability risk? Liability risk is that one of these planes crashes and kills people. Because there is no location where people are together. Now, I guess somebody could fall off their deck because they backed up looking out backwards at it and then try to sue us over that. But all of the observation in this thing is from home. We are particularly not going to disclose the jump locations because we don't want anybody there. And everything else, nobody's going to get closer than a couple of 1,000 feet to it. I can try. I'll go to Skydive Ogden tomorrow and say, and see how they react. But I just don't see it working.
So Councilman, it's, I know how much time you have put into it. You put tons of time. The Kernos have put in tons of time. I've put in tons of time. Chris has at Sky Park. I think those are the people that have put in the most amount of time. And I've missed client appointments as well too. But I don't want to see this thing, just like Councilwoman Ivy said, I don't want to see this thing killed. So if I need to step in more, I will step in more. It's a chance to see how the other cities say they're committed. They better be. I mean, we've been working on it, but I'll take over wherever I need to. But I don't want to see this thing killed either, because I think too much time is put into it, and I think what we have to overcome is little. I know it's the amount of time that you've put in, and thinking of having to go back and reinvent the wheel and start over, that would be overwhelming to me as well too. So if you can't do it, and they won't do it, then we got to think of another option, or get our committee involved a lot more. I mean, we intentionally kept the committee small until we were sure it was going to happen, and as soon as it was going to happen, we got a committee together, and they seem like they're all willing to help. So, but I know
the big thing in my mind is will the providers accept it? I think we could get somebody to try and do it, but in my experience, when you start talking about sharing costs like that and changing it this late in the game, it makes providers very nervous, and they just have visions about the things they haven't been able to collect in the past. And yeah, we're talking about cities in the county. Some of these people already have their invoices to us and are processing them. Most of them don't have them yet, or didn't know if they had them. I don't know what will happen. I don't know if it creates different issues with the county. I would think it wouldn't. But I don't know.
Bill, I am sorry to add to your troubles on this. It's not my intent. I mean, I'm looking at it as we may not reach zero liability, but without an interlocal, the only way that I can see, maybe Lisa or Brant will weigh in on this, that we protect ourselves as our arrangement is one-to-one, not one-to-many, where we're potentially covering other people. I don't know. Maybe it's just the wrong approach, but to me, I'm in the if we don't ask, we don't get. And if they say no, then maybe it is a different discussion. I don't know. Brant, Lisa, do you have any other words of advice one way or another?
Well, I agree that having each individual entity pay themselves reduces Centerville's risk, because we're not, collecting the money and basically paying the organizer. But I think it's worth asking. I know a lot of work has gone into this, but maybe kind of like the mayor said, if you can just ask people and say, look, we need the money by next Tuesday or whenever the deadline is, if that's possible. Hopefully, or Bill, if someone can talk to I don't know how many entities there are. But, if you have a $250 barbecue, you could just have Centerville cover that and not make 13 entities contribute proportionately to the barbecue, something like that. But, you know, the main money going to the skydivers.
And I agree with that. There's a way.
Basically 5 entities getting money.
So if you have, if Skydive Ogden is the bulk of it, maybe that is divided by 12, but maybe there is a cost share where somebody sponsors, shall we say, a particular cost of the $250 this or the cost for one of the entities or whatever it might be. I'm not sure what that looks like. But yes, it does. It would help with the liability and sharing it. I just don't know what that looks like. But also I think it might be enlightening to know if you went back to the cities, as one city said, hey, I'm writing $1,000 check to Centerville, that indemnifies me, I'm out. But if you go to that city and say, look, you're paying your fair share, and they say, no, I'm not doing that, that tells you where they feel about the liability. And if they don't want to participate at that point because they need to contribute directly and take on some of that liability, then we think we have our answer for that particular city. Just a thought.
Yeah, the problem is, one of the problems that generates is that if that problem, not to pick on anybody, happens to be Kaysville right in the middle of things, now what do you do?
They don't get a jumper?
Because
they detour over the lake and miss their city entirely.
We release a sign behind one of the planes that says, this is not for you, your 4th of July. I don't know, I'm just kidding.
I understand. All I'm pointing out is that it's a stupid little factor that creates an issue. I mean, we have 3 cities, one city that because of their location, we didn't invite. We have 2 cities that didn't respond. I don't know if they ever responded, but they're not interested.
I will share, Councilmember Ince, based on the emails I've seen from other city managers, I highly doubt that you'll have too many cities, particularly the ones that are in center of Davis County, backing out if they're asked to participate financially directly to the vendors. I'm just saying,
Okay.
I don't think that would be an issue.
I'm not concerned about that. I don't think they'll back out.
I don't think the cities will back out. I think it's the
I don't
vendors
think
that
the
will.
cities will.
Bill, at least on a
Just if you can go get the businesses to go for it, getting different separate checks.
on a top note, Bill, to end this particular piece of the conversation, you may have planted the seed for future Davis County 4th of July participation, you know, as a whole. I mean, this is a one-off, but maybe you've created something. We are one of the few cities that holds, you know, a lot of 4th of July events. There are smaller events that happen around the county. Maybe you've got a genesis of something that can grow into be quite a substantial thing if we can get past this first year.
And,
Well, guess what? It'll
Bill,
be a different city councilman sponsoring it.
Fair enough.
But Bill, would it help the vendor if the cities all had to pay upfront in advance? And you said, okay, the checks are going to have several different names on them, but you've got all your money up front before the event happens. I don't see a vendor being able to say, I've got a problem with that. Does that?
I think they'd want the money up front anyway. So
as long as it's early enough up front that they still feel comfortable. I think it's great.
See, I'd rather not pay up front. I'd rather, you know, Skydive Ogden, because of the magnitude, my inclination would be half and half. But
to me, it's,
you know, maybe that's part of
But
the
if it
incentive to
makes
get
them
them to
feel
accept.
comfortable.
$1,000 is $1,000. I know it's a lot of money, but it's not tons of money. Not like paying $5,000 to a band. So I don't know why people wouldn't have problems if they're in committing $1,000. They're sending $1,000 to us.
Mm-hmm.
Why wouldn't they send $1,000 to somebody else?
Again, I don't think the problem's on the city side. The cities, I think, are looking to us to make sure that it happens. Would they be as comfortable in paying each of these vendors the money up in paying the vendors in advance? I don't know. I haven't had real good luck in my life with paying people in advance. They seem to forget what they were going to do. So I prefer to pay afterwards. And I guess that just colors my conversation. I'll just go to people and see what I can pull together. I don't see the problem as being on the city side. I see the problem being on the other side.
I would think you could ask for them up front. I see what you're saying about, I'm one that likes to pay half and half or whatever, but I think we're working with pretty reputable companies. And if somebody backs out, we're out less than $1,000 because you're still going to have somebody show up. So it's not like the city's only going to be out a few $100s. So I would be comfortable if you told all cities they needed to pay by June 27th or June 25th or whatever. I would think that would save a lot of work on your part. And I'm willing to chance the $1,000.
Yep, me too.
Yeah, again, though, the problem that I'm saying, Robin, is now I've got to have somebody monitor that happened, and somebody that's going to coordinate with the vendor who says he didn't get his check, and somebody who's going to make the call if a check didn't come through. It's the mechanics and the time commitment and getting someone to do it. That's I think everybody's going to follow through and do it. That isn't the issue. It's the mechanics and making sure that it happens, because people say they're going to pay things and then they just don't do it. Oh, I forgot that. Oh, I sent it. I know I sent it.
Well, I put it a little bit back on the vendor bill. I mean, the vendor's eager to provide a service on a holiday. You know, I think that the vendor can easily send an email off to the 12 entities and say, you know, this is the payment date. I don't know. Having been a small business guy before, if it was a matter of burning off an invoice or, you know, paying a credit card fee to get a hold of that money, I'd certainly do it, and I did. So I don't know. Let's see what they say. I mean, maybe they say it's horrible. Maybe they don't.
I'll see what I can do.
I don't know, but I think that because they want the business and they're working with cities, that they would probably go along with it. If I'm willing to work with one of the committee members and pound cities to make sure they get their money, if this is what we have to do to make this happen. You know, I don't want to, because of a small trip up like this, have it kill the thing. And Bill, I don't want to put more burden on you too, but I'm saying I'll take more burden on. I'll go to one of the other committee members.
Let's just go to the people that were in the meeting today, and we've got their email addresses, and it seems to me that you've got to put the responsibility in one pair of hands as opposed to 6, and tell them we need somebody to step up and to act as a payment coordinator. And Chris and I will go to the people and tell them they're going to be getting their money separately, and that we've got somebody that's going to coordinate it and see if we can get it accepted. I don't know what else to say.
Is there any reason why Sky Park wouldn't take the money and then they pay them out?
I don't know. We could ask.
Question.
I mean, that might be the first thing, rather than if we say, hey, Sky Park, we'll get the money to you and you pay them out.
So we collect from the cities and we give it to Sky Park, and Sky Park says it, or the cities each pay Sky Park?
Cities each pay Sky Park.
Make them the event coordinator de facto by giving them the money.
Yeah, or we just say to the cities, hey, if you haven't sent us money yet, you got to get to the Sky Park by June 23rd or something, you know, or whatever the date is.
Just depend on what
we can approach Chris tomorrow. I can approach Chris tomorrow on that. I actually feel that would cause less problem. I don't know that. I mean, Chris and Sky Park out of this get one thing. That is the promised support of 6 people when he does his annual show next year. And his annual show is different from our annual, from what we're doing. But that's the only thing he's getting out of it, is he's being a good citizen and getting promised support for his deal next year. So he's not making any percentage on this. And if we ask him to, he may feel that he needs to. Now, he will probably sell some fuel, because each of these planes many of these planes that are flying are housed at Sky Park and will need to refuel. And he certainly, I'm sure, makes money on his fuel. Let me see. I don't think any of the individual providers would care a whit about the money coming from Sky Park versus from us.
Yeah, no, they wouldn't care.
Yep. It sounds like the perfect solution if he's willing to do it.
Yeah, it made me feel risk-free as much as you can with an air show.
Okay.
Parade, because we don't want to, like you said last time, Bill, we don't want to confuse the insurance by saying air show versus, you know, air parade. You mentioned specifically something about that last time.
Yeah.
That'll be my only concern, is Air Park going to be willing to take the liability?
Well, they may not view it the same way that we have to as a city. So, I mean, let's see what the conversation turns into.
He has liability for planes and is familiar with planes in the air day in and day out. I suspect what we are stumbling on, he won't even think about.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
The biggest obstacle with him is going to be they just started a new hangar project and he's extremely busy at the moment. And he has very, very little staff.
Well, they bring in money somehow. They rent hangars and they rent to, so I don't know if it's an outside bookkeeping firm or an internal accountant, but
I don't know, but you've been out there in the office. There's not much structure there. There's not many people there.
there isn't, but they have to bring in money somehow.
Oh yeah, I mean, you're right. They
It has somebody accounting for it.
good point. I don't question that. I'm just saying, based on what's in the office, it's a 3-person operation. Now, all of the hangar rentals may go to a completely different location. He's putting in either 30 or 50 new hangars right now, and they are all pre-leased. To the tune of over $100,000 a year. So yeah, there's got to be something there. I will actually hit that first.
Then you call me on it and I'll help you with the other if that doesn't work.
And then what we'll have to do is get out a revised invoice that says pay Sky Park Airport.
Right. You make that one call to Chris and then call me after that. And if Chris is good, then great. If not, I'll get another committee member involved. And if you want me to call those couple other places that you've talked to about money, and I'll call them and say, hey, when do you need your money by? And we'll just have people pay up front. I think they'd go for it. We're not asking cities to commit
$100,000. Yeah, no, that's right. We're talking $1,000.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll see what I can do.
Thanks for all you've done, both you and the mayor.
Hopefully we get it off the ground.
If you want me to call Chris, I'll call Chris.
No, I'm comfortable calling him. Supposed to call him about something else in the morning anyway.
Okay.
Good pun to end on too, Bill. It'll get off the ground.
As long as it stays off the ground.
All
That'll be
right.
great.
I think we got a plan. Let's talk tomorrow, Bill. Make sure you get to some client appointments, and I will do the same.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much. We are looking at, I thought it was my phone. Hey, let's move to item number 5. This is minute review and acceptance of the June 2nd, 2020 City Council work session and the June 2nd, 2020 City Council meeting minutes. Any suggestions or changes of those, or is there a motion to approve those minutes?
Yeah, I did have one change that was in the city council minutes, and I didn't write. Let me just do a quick search on it. It was about the 5K run. Yeah, it is page 3, line 10. Mayor, your quote is saying the city would host a 5K run. I think we need to put virtual in there so this does not confuse people to come congregate, because that's a virtual run.
Yes, I will accept that change. I will also tell you right now, it was going to be part of my mayor's report, is I talked to them today, and they're not even going to do the virtual 5K run. But you should put that note in there. I agree.
Just to clarify, Councilmember McHugh, did I hear you say Rotary Club is sponsoring? The city is not sponsoring that. Rotary Club sponsors that.
Rotary.
And that was mentioned in the minutes, or I mean in the recording.
If we reflect that, that's fine. I just want to be clear on what it was there. And now it will have the new revised one of saying after the discussion of the minutes for this purpose, it's not being done on the next go through. That's the only amendment I had.
Okay, with that amendment, you want to give us a motion then, Councilman?
Motion to accept the minutes with the amendment related to the 5K run as detailed, both the city council meeting and the work session minutes.
Second.
Do I have a motion and a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Great. City council report. I know Councilwoman Ivy, you said you may not have anything, but you're
I don't have anything. Neither of my committees have met. We will be meeting for the museum next week, and I'll have something after that.
Okay, thank you. We'll get you on another agenda then. Okay.
Yep.
Item number 7, mayor's report. I'll see if I can just go through them quick. Fire district, we met yesterday. We approved the budget for next year. Also want to let you know and you be aware of with people with COVID, I think people are out and about hiking an awful lot because the chief says that every weekend they have been up in the mountains doing a rescue, which they usually don't have that every weekend. There's been all sorts of injuries, and there was even one fatality that they've responded to as well. So that's the highlights of the fire district meeting. The second thing is I should have said something to you all out in advance, but I just meant to talk about it tonight. Is that I had this idea as a follow-up to the YouTube that I did back in March about as far as what the city was doing when, with COVID. And late last week, I thought I could do another YouTube, or I could just do a Zoom meeting with the residents. And I was doing a Zoom meeting tomorrow night from 8 to 9. It's really just to discuss what we've done as a city as a COVID. And it was also to talk about try and lift spirits that we had something going on the 4th of July. So I may have to modify that a little bit, but we'll see. Maybe early in the morning if we can. We're still good going forth, but we're going to make it work the 4th. But so that's what it was. It's kind of similar to the I know that since I've been mayor that, and I think it's a great idea, what you've always had two of you monthly doing a meet your council person.
Not lately.
I know you haven't done it lately, but and it's also part of we've talked with because of the cost of the newsletter going out. This hasn't been decided, but we've talked that you know maybe we won't be doing a quarterly newsletter in the future. We may not, but you know I kind of thought, hey, see how this goes, and it's kind of a mayor's report on a quarterly basis on a Zoom meeting. Now, I may get myself ambushed. To me, I've always thought not a lot of people tune in, so there's only going to be a half a dozen people, but maybe I'll be surprised and it'll be different. But I just thought that it was a good thing to do with the COVID and letting people know where the city's at and what we've done and what they have to look forward to going forward. The next thing was I told you the virtual 5K. I talked to Rick Martin today, and they had it out there for about 15 days, and they'd only had 4 people sign up, and they were going to have some printing costs and printing T-shirts that they had to do this week, and he just didn't know if they were going to get the response to a virtual 5K, even though I know when it's not a virtual, people sign up in the last 2 days at City Hall. But I don't know if that was going to happen with the virtual 5K. He didn't either. And he made the decision that, and Rick's part of Rotary, he was assigned to that for Rotary, that they were not doing a virtual 5K. So we're down to the airplane parade. And one thing we didn't talk about in that report as well, too, we are talking about within our city, block captains leading a Pledge of Allegiance and people going out to their curbs with their flags. And even if you can't hear your block captain, I'll repeating the Pledge of Allegiance at 9 o'clock on the 4th of July as well too. And then after that, the air parade coming over.
Now, are we still planning on are you still planning on a decorating push?
We have not been focusing on a decorating push at all.
We've had,
go ahead and
finish that.
No, go ahead.
We've had one of the stake presidents push back and not want to support urging the block captains to do the PR work to let everybody know about the flag ceremony.
Really?
And I may have overreacted a little bit, but I was a little bit frustrated with some of the correspondence that went about that because we've had issues about this before, about people are signed up to help in an emergency and help get ready for an emergency, but getting them to do other things like participating in the Utah bike race and potentially at one point in time there was discussion of doing movies in the park, helping on the parades, doesn't really fall in the purview of that emergency service. So I talked to another one to mine today about it. He wanted to think about it overnight, but was inclined to disagree with the one who objected to it. Potentially the one who objected to it is the one who pushes his people the hardest to participate. And generally they have the highest numbers on all of the drills. So now Stephanie knows who that is. But so that may fall by the wayside. I actually talked to Kim about that today, told her that I was a little bit in a quandary, that generally I agree with not pushing them to do other things. I thought this fell in a different category, but we just need to kind of work our way through it.
But even if you don't have block captains going out to their curb and repeating the Pledge of Allegiance, we're still going to encourage people, obviously, to go out to the curb at 9 o'clock and post a flag on their house or, you know.
But how do we get that word out?
We'll do it through part of through the Zoom meeting the other night, through through, we're going to have probably a newsletter go out by then. You know,
Well, and it can be on the website, and I think it's a good idea. I like it, but I think getting a core number of people that encourage it is what will help to make it work. And so I think she had a good idea.
Yeah.
We use Facebook. We have 2 or 3 different Centerville sites that I'm sure I could contact the administrators on those sites, and they would get to hundreds of people.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of, that's how we'll get it out. I mean, the word will spread fast that way. In fairness to Kim and Brian, I took them off of some of this other stuff. I didn't specifically say get off of it, but outside of Councilman Ince, Kim's knocked herself out.
She has.
In doing this, and we devoted her time all to this air parade. So, you know, the time that she.
So we decided not to decorate.
Yes, it hasn't come up more. I mean, we went to this other things, and I'm not saying that we can't put it out there. It's just that
I think it's a great idea if anybody wants to.
It was a fabulous idea.
I like
my wife has told me that we are, so.
I mean,
in your spare time.
There's no reason we can't put it out there through our city website and our Twitter account and other Centerville Facebook sites and through the newsletter and that sort of thing is, hey, well, you're welcome to decorate your house. It's just we probably we're not set up to where we're judging and giving them prizes unless somebody else wants to take that on, that part of it. But I think it's a great idea.
I do too.
So I'm sure in favor of get it out there to people, tell them to do it, show spirit, you know, show spirit on the patriotism on the 4th of July. The next thing is I met with Mayor Lewis, Mayor Talbot, Mayor myself, and Mayor Arvey. So it'd be North Salt Lake, Bountiful, Centerville, Farmington, here at City Hall last Thursday with 2 UTA officials, Beth Holbrook and Hal Johnson, about this BRT. And before I bring anything to you solid, I said, for my council, I need to have from you exactly what the proposed route is, and how that route's going to be, and what costs there would be to us. So I'm hoping that within by the next city council meeting that they committed to get that to me by the end of this week.
What is BRT?
Bus rapid transit. It's the one they tried to put down Main Street, and I said absolutely not.
Yes, as it stands right now, it's not any light rail stuff, and they say there's no dedicated bus route. So it's gonna be a faster system than Route 55 and Route 70, which I've taken into Salt Lake many times and takes an hour to do. It's supposed to be faster with less stops for those residents that want to try and get into Salt Lake between, you know, from Farmington into Salt Lake.
So
but it causes all sorts of trouble on our Main Street.
So that's why we'll see their proposal. So I don't want to speculate on anything until I have the stuff back from them, you know.
So,
and I did say that I have to have all those details to go to my council, and also they were obviously willing to come any meeting as well too. So let's get the details. Let's see what it is. You know, and then we can talk it over and discuss what comes from that. So, but if it meets our criteria and we can get people into Salt Lake quicker with the growth that we're having, I think as many forms of transportation is good if it meets the criteria that we're looking for in our community.
I heard that the mayors in South Davis County had sent a letter to UTA to ask them to look at this again. Is that right? And were we part of that?
Yes, you know, UTA and stuff moves so slow that North Salt Lake and Bountiful were in on it. But Centerville and Farmington, I don't know, it was before my time. I don't know if we were approached.
We were not. We were approached and we met together and we said, absolutely not. We don't want to do this.
Okay.
I
That's correct.
just request that we probably move on until we have an agenda item before we go into.
Yes, let's do that. Thank you. We'll get those details to you, okay? And then we got a couple other things, but they were just small things. So I'll just skip on that and report on those at the next meeting. Last thing I need to do is we need to appoint a council member to the newly formed audit committee. I did not call and ask anybody. You know, most appointments I bring a name, and then you approve the name or disapprove the name. This was meant as a discussion. Obviously, we probably have in mind maybe somebody would like to do it. It won't be a real-time commitment thing. Right now, we're all pretty even on our commitments, but I had thought of Councilman Ince, but I had not asked him.
I would be inclined to say yes.
Okay. So then that's what our document that we passed a meeting or two ago, that we need a council person on it. So Councilman Ince is accepted right now and said yes. Is everyone else okay with Councilman Ince being on the audit committee?
I think that's a great choice.
Yeah, I would motion that we give advice and consent to appoint Bill to the audit committee.
Second.
All right.
And thank you, Bill.
Thanks for your support.
All right. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you. All right, let's move on. City manager's report.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just a few items. The first item, as you can see under the city manager report, the financial report is attached. From the past conversations we've had, the point of attaching the financial report is for transparency and just letting the public have an opportunity to review the financial report. What I'd like to propose, instead of having it attached to the city manager, is we actually put it on our website. I think if that's the point of having transparency, we just have it on our website and anybody can go see the financial report whenever they would like. We'll still have our quarterly updates from Marcus and or Jacob. But that's just a thought I had. Is any objection to that, or just prefer to be attached to the agenda every time, or both?
As far as I'm concerned, it's adequate at the website. I don't know that it even makes sense to put it on the website more than quarterly.
I'm with you.
But I would probably leave active. Very easy to see on the budget, the prior year's CAFR, the budget, and the quarterly numbers.
Okay.
But I don't object to the monthly being there. A month is too small. You need a quarter to really see something.
I totally agree. I'm just trying to, standard practice.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd just like to check the statutes because there are some statutory requirements on updating the council. So I know that the quarterly is required.
The monthly is not required, Lisa. It's just the quarterly.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah,
we'll have our
transparency if we stick it up there monthly. If it's not a huge effort item.
And we'll leave it up there. And we'll leave it up there quarterly for 3 months until it's updated, so anybody can access it anytime. I like it. Okay.
Cool. Sounds good.
First item down. Second item, Jake, if you want to stay on and discuss, we received, so we've gone out for bid on the front end twice now. First, what Jacob has done is actually gone out to bid separately. We have 2 items we're looking at doing. One, we don't have ADA accessibility into City Hall, which could be problematic. We could receive a complaint. And so we need to address the ADA accessibility into City Hall. And
Is that because of the non-opening doors?
right, so Jacob went out to bid and actually reached out to Beacon directly, who does a lot of the meeting houses and who's also doing the doors here in City Hall right now, to get a bid. And Jacob, if you want to talk about that real quick.
Yeah, so we did receive a bid from Beacon and it came in at about $16,000. What that is for aluminum doors, the glass aluminum doors with the crash bar, a handle on the outside for pulling. It also includes 2 of the ADA hinges and 3 buttons. Or actually, no, correction, 2 buttons for opening up the ADA, including the pedestal that would hold the button for the ADA. So it's all the electrical, the doors themselves. Now we have a few options when it comes to the doors. There's what they call the clear, which is what you see. It's kind of the silver color. That's pretty common. You see that. And then they also, for an additional $600 to $900, depending on the color per pair, you can get it in a dark bronze or a black color. Those are some options. I wanted to ask the council what your preference was on the color as well. The standard is the clear, and that's what they would come in unless we say otherwise and pay that additional. So we're talking $16,000 to $17,000 if you want to do the additional color.
My vote is that we don't decide a color without Tammy.
Oh yes, you're not here.
You're chicken.
We can reach out to Councilmember Phil.
She's more of a decorator than I am, so she
We'll reach
would
out to
probably
her.
have an opinion.
I guess
Is there any way at all of doing it with wood doors? I hate the metal doors.
Yeah.
Our doors look nice.
Well, Beacon Doors, they just specialize in the metal. They don't do wood. So it's just
wood has been expensive to maintain. We'll definitely share that. It's expensive to maintain for sure.
Is it?
Mm-hmm.
So are these glass doors? Are we talking about the whole door be metal color, or are we talking about glass with just the outside?
They're glass panel doors. It's just the frame of the.
Just like the church.
Yeah, just like your church, George. It's like the court, the one that we have going into the court side for the employees. They would look like that.
So if we would like to proceed at least with, I'd like to proceed with going forward with the doors. We can reach out to Councilmember Fillmore on color and aesthetics, but just want to run that by council. It's in the budget for this year. So it's already been.
Right, it's budget and there's a 3 to 4 week lead time to order the door.
So where are we on year-end budget and fixes, and how far under or over are we?
Well, we had about $100,000 budgeted for this building in renovation, and I think we spent about 5,000 of that so far.
And under
where are we overall on budget?
We're under 500 approximately right now.
Yeah, our net revenue over expenditures is right around 500. We project it'll be about 450 year end.
But we're going to need every penny of that next year, in all likelihood.
I don't think so. Not based on the projections we're getting, no. But again, as you heard earlier, again, I don't want to go into too much of a discussion, but we're using $336,000 of the fund balance to balance next year's budget. That's assuming we see an increase of 30% decrease in our revenues, which we are not anywhere. We're not seeing that as of right now. The pessimistic model predicts 10% reduction, if any.
But a lot of that will depend on where our COVID goes in the next 2 or 3 months.
So again, I just wanted to bring this up because we'd like to proceed as staff in taking care of the doors since it's in this year's budget.
And just so you feel better, Bill, we are bumping up again, and this is a total different discussion, just FYI. We're projecting we're going to be hitting about 22% on our fund balance, and state statute only allows us to go up to 25%. So we're getting up there. That's good news.
That is good news.
Yeah, but we can sequester some money too, so.
Yeah, it's true.
I see, it appears that Paul's there, but silenced, and I was thinking there was something I was going to ask him. Now I've lost it.
Is it about the doors being clear and the safety of that?
No. Now I've lost it. I don't know what it was. I guess we really don't have any choice, but so do you need a resolution or just a vote of confidence?
Well, since it's really at this point, the budget is approved and we're talking about 16,000, which as city manager, I had the approval to approve that. I'm just asking for input from you just to make sure that you understand what direction staff would like to go at this point. And you have some decision maybe on color. That's really what we're looking for.
You're looking for color.
Unfortunately, if you go to the bronze color, you probably got to do the court door the same.
Mm-hmm.
It would look rather foolish to have the one bronze and the other one silver.
Correct.
10 feet apart.
Councilmember Fillmore, you made a decision without it.
The large lights that are next to the doors right now are bronze color, but then the railings on that bridge right there are black.
Oh, or black. That's true.
Yeah, they're black. And the
black.
frame that we have now is kind of an off-white.
All right, what we'll do is with the input we received, we'll come back and maybe a weekly update, send you kind of the color choice, but we'll reach out to Councilmember Fillmore and get it individually.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. And then the next, Jacob, just for a minute. Again, I don't want to go into huge detail right now. Well, let's hold. No, I'll let you know now. We're looking at proceeding with, well, not necessarily proceeding. We received a bid back on the front end from a separate contractor after the bids proposal was closed, which we're allowed to do from Key Salmon to do that front end. The bid came back $68,000, which is much less than what the engineering estimate was from the architect.
When you say the front end, you mean the office?
Yes, the front end. Yeah, the office area. Just so you know, we've had a conversation with the Davis County group yesterday, and they informed us that there's some CARES Act funding going to the county, which a portion of that's going to be dedicated to the cities, and there's a portion dedicated to Centerville, and we can actually use COVID CARES Act money to do our front end, since it will improve our safety and security through protecting our employees from viruses and pandemics and things like that. So we could actually get funding for that. So we'll have more information at an upcoming council meeting. Just want to give you a heads up on that. And we'll have more information at later times. You have anything else to add, Jacob?
No, I'm sure we'll have a discussion later more about the CARES Act and that funding.
I just wanted to update you with the front end. The doors and the front end kind of go hand in hand in this. But. All right, thanks, Jacob. Appreciate it. And last thing I want to talk about is 2 weeks ago, we had a conversation with Jansen regarding assistance to Centerpoint Theater regarding their rent. One of the items Centerpoint Jansen had brought up is he wants to have bracelets made that reconnect on them. And Jansen has sent me an email wondering if this city would like to sponsor or purchase those bracelets, whether it's the entire amount or a portion. The total cost he quoted is $3,000 for bracelets that we can hand out to those moviegoers that come into the concert in the parking lot. And I just wanted to get your thoughts.
What's our cost on that?
Jansen quoted $3,000 for the bracelets.
How many bracelets is he getting?
30. I really don't know. I'm totally kidding.
no, seriously, $3,000 in rubber bracelets is a ton of bracelets. I'm just trying to figure out what he's looking at.
So let's see. He didn't, in his email, he did not state a number. A number that will be purchased for $3,000.
How much was our table for the gala? which I presume is not happening.
Question. I
No,
want
the
to say
gate
that
is not happening.
Pardon?
I want to say
The gate is not happening.
So how much was our table? 2 or 1?
It was at least 2.
Mhm.
And did we 6 months of rent off? We gave them 3, and then did we give them another 3?
Yeah, we gave them a
Yeah.
second 3.
So they've got 6 months of no rent.
I would say if it helps him get it up and he thinks it's worth that, I would support the 3, since 2 of it was in the budget already. Because I think our tables were 2.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what it was, but
Okay, I'll, if there's no other thoughts, I will reach out to Jansen. Let them know we
I would like to know how many they are.
Okay, I'll follow up.
I'll bet you with that kind of money, you're looking at 3,000.
dollar bracelet.
I wouldn't think they'd be $1.
I don't think they're $1 a piece.
No, these are sourcing out of China. They're like 15 to 20 cents a piece.
Yeah, that's what I was
I'm
gonna
saying. Like 3,000 is a ton of bracelets. I'm just trying to figure out where he's sourcing them and what he's trying to get.
You're gonna give one to every citizen then?
At $3,000, you probably could. We need to know more details.
All right, will do. And then just also upcoming agenda items next week. We've got a number of things. Lisa's working on personnel policies. We've got a number of policies we'd like to bring before you for consideration. Take-home vehicles, cell phone policy. I don't know, Lisa, what else you're working on, but a number of policies that we'll start bringing before you. And then also just an overhaul of our entire personnel policy manual. Lisa's been working on that for some time, looking at a number of things. Utopia will be here next month. Go ahead, Lisa.
Yeah, I was just saying, my preference is to try and bring the entire manual and reformat it and renumber it, and then bring in the subsequent amendments that we are working on. And then we'll have that legislative history of all of those amendments.
Thanks, Lisa. And then we'll have Utopia will be presenting next month. We'll have the Ferguson Group, who's the lobbyist in DC that was approved in the budget tonight, do a presentation, what services they can provide, which then at that time you can decide whether or not you want to enter into agreement with the Ferguson Group. We'll have Dee Hansen. We were going to have Dee Hansen present Sewer District months ago, but with everything happening, we delayed that, but we'll have Dee Hansen next month at one of the meetings. So it's going to start getting really busy. Just giving you a heads up. Budget done. Now policies and other items that coincide with this budget need to be discussed. So, and with that, I have nothing else. If there's any questions for me, I'm happy to answer them.
Are we meeting physically next month?
As I said to Brant today, I don't mind meeting physically, but I haven't seen a big need for it. I think that we're getting as much done Zoom as if we meet. But I'm not opposed to meeting, but I know that many cities are. I'm fine going either way, but as I said to Brant, I don't mind Zoom for another month myself.
Well, I'll just throw out there in the Health and Human Services Committee today, Dr. Angela Dunn mentioned that we are now in the acceleration phase of the pandemic, which is indicated by the fact that our testing has gone from 3 to 5% positives to 8 to 10% positives. And if you look at we have not hit a plateau. The plateau has to be 14 days and then head down. So we're now in our pandemic in an acceleration phase. So I'm more inclined to see where that goes, and we can change the location pretty quickly, but Zoom is keeping a lot of people safe right now.
I'm thinking if we're not getting our work done, yes, we get together, but out of concern for some of the council members and their families, a concern for citizens as well too, if we're getting the work done, I was fine with Zoom for another month.
Okay.
Although it is harder for Brent to try and give us a cue that we're running along on a topic on Zoom. So you have to break it over the top of us, or Lisa, or anyone else.
All right, let's move on. I need a motion. We do have closed session tonight, but I need a motion to go to we got to approve the RDA budget. Go to the RDA budget with the intent to come back to city council to do the closed session.
Make a motion to adjourn city council to have an RDA meeting with the intent of coming back and reconvening.
Second.
Got a motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. We're going to stay on the same channel for the RDA meeting. After the RDA meeting, we will go to another channel for the Zoom meeting. Are we okay?
We're going to come back to the city council and then adjourn to closed, right? So we're not.
Yes, sorry. Yes, yes, I'm sorry. That's correct. So we will have to go back to city council first and adjourn to a closed meeting. Leah, am I okay going ahead with the RDA?
Yes.
Okay, great. So we have, I can see we have McEwen here, Meekum here, Ivy here, Ince here. We have 4 of the directors present. So we do have a quorum. And so let's go to the business of the meeting. The first thing is the fiscal year 2021 RDA final budget. Jake, do you have anything more to tell us on that before we go to a public hearing?
No changes from last time. This is the same budget.
Okay, if that's the case, then we will go to a public hearing for the fiscal year 2021 RDA final budget. That public hearing is now open to discuss that issue, and I'll give it a few seconds. I don't see anybody coming in unless Leah, you've seen somebody. So I will close the public hearing, and I will entertain a motion to accept the fiscal year 2021 RDA final budget.
Make a motion to accept the fiscal year 2021 budget for the RDA of the city of Centerville as presented.
Second.
Do we have a second? Okay. Roll call vote. Director Ince.
Aye.
Director McEwen.
Aye.
Director Meekum.
Aye.
Director Ivy.
Aye.
Thank you. That motion passes 4-0. Second item on the RDA agenda is minutes review and acceptance of the June 2nd, 2020 RDA minutes. Any changes to that? If not, I'll accept the motion to accept the minutes.
Make a motion to accept the minutes of the June 2, 2020 RDA meeting.
Second.
Do I have a motion to second? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Great. Look for a motion to adjourn back to city council meeting.
Make a motion to adjourn the RDA meeting back to city council.
Second.
We have motion to second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Great. All right. We are back in city council meeting. I will look for a motion to adjourn city council meeting to go to a closed session.
I can do that. So I'll make a motion that we adjourn the city council meeting to go into closed session to discuss character and competence of an individual, deployment of security personnel or equipment as prescribed by law, with no intent to return back to a public session.
Second.
Second. Okay, great. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, find a different link to go to. Thank you. Council meeting's closed.